The thorns don't care that her dress costs more than most people make in a month. They rip through the midnight blue silk like claws through skin, leaving trails of crimson across fabric that once made her feel beautiful. Luna Ashcroft crashes through another wall of brambles, her breath coming in ragged gasps that burn her throat raw. The designer gown, the one she'd chosen so carefully for tonight's ceremony, now hangs in tatters around her legs, weighing her down with every desperate step. Her feet are bare. Somewhere between the council chamber and this godforsaken wilderness, she'd lost the silver heels that had made her feel worthy of standing beside an alpha. Now her soles are sliced open on rocks and thorns, leaving a blood trail that any competent tracker could follow. But she can't stop. Not when she can still hear them behind her. The howls echo through the mountain forest like a death song. Low, haunting calls that speak of hunger and pursuit. The Shadowmere pack knows these woods better than she ever will. They've been hunting these ridges for generations, while she's spent her life in boardrooms and ballrooms, playing at being civilized. Now that veneer has been stripped away, and all that's left is a terrified woman running for her life, freezing. Rain hammers down from the October sky, each drop hitting her exposed skin like tiny ice bullets. The storm rolled in just as she fled the pack house, as if the very heavens were weeping for what had been done. Her hair, styled so perfectly just hours ago, now plasters against her skull in dark, wet ropes. Water streams down her face, mixing tears with rain until she can't tell which is which anymore. Her left shoulder throbs with a pain that goes deeper than muscle and bone. The mark is still fresh there, still bleeding through the torn fabric of her dress. Alpha Damien Cross had sunk his canines into her flesh just 3 days ago, claiming her as his mate in front of the entire pack. She can still feel the echo of that bite, the way her body had sung with recognition and completion. For 72 perfect hours, she'd believed she was finally where she belonged. The memory hits her like a physical blow, stealing what little breath she has left. 3 hours ago, she was standing in that same council chamber, wearing this same dress, believing tonight would make everything official. The Luna ceremony, her inauguration as the Alpha's partner and the pack's mother. She'd practiced her speech for weeks, memorizing every word about honor and protection and unity. Instead, she'd watched Damien's face transform from desire to disgust as the pack elders whispered their poison in his ears. She'd felt the exact moment his love turned to fear, felt it through the mate bond like ice water flooding her veins. And when he'd spoken those words, "You're not strong enough to be my Luna," in front of everyone who mattered, the world had tilted off its axis. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how he'd looked at her afterward, like she was something contaminated, something dangerous that needed to be contained. The man who'd held her face in his hands just that morning, who'd whispered promises about their future, had stared at her like she was a loaded gun. "I know what you are," he'd said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "We all know now. The Moonfire bloodline dies with you, Luna. I won't let you destroy everything I've built." Her bare foot catches on a root, sending her tumbling down a steep embankment. Rocks tear new holes in her dress and skin as she rolls, branches whipping across her face and arms. She crashes into a fallen log at the bottom, her ribs screaming in protest as all the air leaves her lungs. For a moment, she can only lie there in the mud and decomposing leaves, gasping like a landed fish. The howls are closer now, much closer. Luna forces herself to move, crawling over the log and stumbling toward what looks like an old mining road. Her legs shake with exhaustion and shock, but terror drives her forward. She knows what happens to wolves who run from the pack. She's heard the stories, whispered in hushed tones around winter fires. Rogues don't last long in these mountains. Not with winter coming and every pack for hundreds of miles knowing to shoot first and ask questions later. But she's not just any rogue. She's a rogue with a secret that could get her killed in far worse ways than a simple hunt. The rain intensifies, turning the dirt road into a slick mud trap that sends her slipping and sliding with every step. Lightning illuminates the forest in stark, white flashes that make the shadows dance like living things. Thunder follows seconds later, so loud it rattles her bones and drowns out the sound of pursuit. For a moment, she allows herself to hope that maybe the storm will cover her tracks, wash away her scent, give her the chance she needs to disappear forever. Her hand moves instinctively to her shoulder, pressing against the mating mark that should have been her salvation. Instead, it feels like a brand now, a scarlet letter written in her own blood. Through their severed bond, she can still feel Damien's presence like a splinter in her mind. He's following her, leading the hunt with the cold efficiency that made him the most feared alpha in North America. The memory of his transformation still haunts her. She'd seen him shift before, of course, but never in anger, never with that look of absolute judgment in his golden eyes. His wolf had been magnificent, and terrible, black as midnight, larger than any shifter she'd ever seen, with intelligence that was purely predatory. When he'd let out that first howl, calling the pack to hunt, she'd known with crystalline clarity that the man she'd loved was gone forever. Her feet find the entrance to an old mine shaft, barely visible through the curtain of rain. The wooden supports look rotten and unstable, but the darkness beyond promises shelter from both the storm and searching eyes. Luna hesitates for just a moment, weighing certain death underground against probable death in the open. The howls decide for her. They're so close now she can almost feel breath on her neck. She plunges into the mine without looking back. The darkness swallows her whole, so complete it's like being buried alive. Her hands shake as she feels along the rough stone walls, deeper into the tunnel system that probably hasn't seen human life in decades. The air tastes of rust and decay, heavy with the smell of standing water and things better left unnamed. But it's warm here, warmer than the storm outside, and for the first time in hours, she's not being pelted by freezing rain. Luna collapses against the tunnel wall, finally allowing herself to truly feel what's happened. The grief hits her like a physical force, doubling her over as sobs tear from her throat. She clamps a hand over her mouth, terrified that even here, even buried in stone and earth, they might still hear her crying. Everything she'd built her life around is gone. Her family's acceptance bought with years of hiding what she really was. Her position in supernatural society earned through careful conformity and strategic silence. Her future as Luna, the one thing she'd wanted more than breathing. All of it ripped away in a single moment of revelation. Because they know now. They know what flows in her veins. Luna can feel it stirring even now, responding to her emotional state like a living thing. The Moonfire bloodline, the legacy her great-grandmother had died trying to control. Silver light begins to flicker beneath her skin, starting as a barely visible glow and building with each panicked heartbeat. It runs along her arms like liquid starlight, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Not now," she whispers into the darkness, her voice cracking with desperation. "Please, not now." But the power doesn't listen to her pleading any more than it listened to her great-grandmother's. Sparks dance between her fingertips, casting dancing shadows on the mine walls. The ancient magic of her bloodline has been sleeping for 3 generations, waiting for someone strong enough to channel it. Unfortunately, Luna has never felt weaker in her entire life. She remembers the stories her grandmother used to tell, late at night when her parents thought she was sleeping. Stories about Serafina Moonfire, the last true Luna of their bloodline. How she could call down silver flames from the stars themselves. How she could heal mortal wounds with a touch or burn entire armies to ash with her fury. How she'd nearly torn apart the supernatural world before her own power consumed her from within. She was glorious, her grandmother had whispered, smoothing Luna's hair with gentle fingers. But glory burns, little star, and sometimes it burns those we love most of all. Those words feel prophetic now, sitting alone in the dark with power, crackling through her veins like poison. Is this how it started for Serafina? With fear and loss and the terrible weight of being something the world couldn't understand. Had she also once been a woman in love, only to watch that love turn to terror when her true nature was revealed? The silver sparks are getting brighter, harder to control. Luna can feel the magic building inside her like pressure in a dam, looking for cracks, for weaknesses, for any way to break free. She's never been trained to handle this kind of power. Her family had spent her entire childhood teaching her to suppress it, to push it down so deep that even she forgot it existed. They'd made her believe she was normal, that the strange dreams and inexplicable incidents of her youth were just imagination. But you can't kill a bloodline legacy with denial. You can only delay it. A distant sound echoes down the mine shaft, the scrabble of claws on stone, the whisper of movement in the darkness behind her. Luna's blood turns to ice as she realizes her mistake. Wolves have better senses than humans. Better hearing, better sight, infinitely better smell. The darkness that hides her from normal eyes means nothing to a shifter in hunt mode. She stumbles deeper into the mine, following a tunnel that slopes sharply downward. Her hand trails along the wall for guidance, and she can feel the rough marks left by long-dead miners, the gouges where they'd torn precious metals from living rock. How many men had died down here, she wonders, chasing dreams of wealth in the crushing dark? How many had never found their way back to sunlight? The sound follows her, echoing strangely in the confined space. Not quite human footsteps, not quite animal paws. Something in between, something that speaks of a predator comfortable in either form. Luna's heart hammers against her ribs so hard she's sure it can be heard throughout the entire mountain. The silver light beneath her skin pulses in rhythm with her pulse, growing brighter with each terrified beat. She rounds a corner and finds herself in a wider chamber, clearly a place where miners once gathered to rest or plan their next assault on the mountain's treasures. Ancient tools lie scattered in the dust, pickaxes and shovels and lanterns that will never burn again. But what catches her attention is the pool of water in the center of the room, perfectly still and black as obsidian. It reflects her silver glow like a dark mirror, showing her a face she barely recognizes. The woman in the water looks wild, feral, nothing like the polished society Luna who'd walked into that council chamber. Her dark hair hangs in wet tangles around a face streaked with mud and blood. Her dress is little more than rags now, exposing pale skin that glows with otherworldly light. But it's her eyes that shock her most. They're blazing silver, bright as moonbeams, filled with a power that should terrify her. Instead, for just a moment, she feels beautiful. The feeling doesn't last long. The sound of pursuit is getting closer, and she can smell them now, the distinctive musk of wolves on the hunt, mixed with the familiar sense of pack members she's known for years. People who'd smiled at her just this morning, who'd congratulated her on her upcoming Luna ceremony, who'd promised to serve and protect her as their alpha's mate. Now they're hunting her like an animal. Luna backs away from the pool, looking desperately for another way out. The chamber has 3 other tunnels leading away from it, each one disappearing into impenetrable darkness. She has no idea which might lead to safety and which might be dead ends that would trap her like a rat in a cage. The silver light emanating from her skin is getting stronger, bright enough now to illuminate the entire chamber in cold, spectral radiance. She tries again to push the power down, to force it back into whatever dark corner of her soul it's been hiding in all these years. But it's like trying to hold back the tide with her bare hands. The magic wants out. It wants to burn and rage and show the world exactly what Luna Ashcroft really is beneath all that careful civilization. The footsteps stop just outside the chamber. Luna can hear breathing now, controlled and steady. The breathing of someone who knows they have their prey cornered. A shadow moves across the entrance to the tunnel she'd emerged from, tall and broad and unmistakably male. Luna. The voice that echoes through the chamber is deep, commanding, and heartbreakingly familiar. I know you're in there. Come out. And we can end this quickly. Damien. Of course, it would be Damien who found her first. Even through their severed mate bond, some part of him is still connected to her. Some part that remembers what they'd been to each other before fear poisoned everything beautiful between them. She says nothing, pressing herself back against the far wall of the chamber. The silver light pouring from her skin is too bright now. to hide, turning the entire space into a beacon that probably can be seen from outside the mine. But she can't stop it. The magic responds to her emotional state, and right now, she's drowning in terror and heartbreak and rage. I can see the light, Luna. You might as well come out. His voice is gentler now, almost coaxing, like he's talking to a spooked animal. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Harder for who? The words tear from her throat before she can stop them, raw with all the pain she's been swallowing. You threw me away, Damien. You marked me and claimed me and then discarded me like garbage the moment you learned what I am. Silence stretches between them, filled only with the steady drip of water somewhere in the darkness. When he speaks again, his voice carries a weight that makes her chest ache. You know why I had to do it. You know what your bloodline did to the supernatural world. What Serafina Moonfire cost us all. He steps into the chamber, and Luna sees him clearly for the first time since her escape. He's still in human form, but barely. His eyes glow golden in the silver light, and his canines have elongated past human normal. He's fighting his wolf, keeping it leashed through sheer force of will. I'm not Serafina, Luna whispers, but even as she says it, she can feel the lie in the words. The power coursing through her veins sings the same song that once burned cities to ash. I'm not her, aren't you? Damien moves closer, his movements careful and predatory. Look at yourself, Luna. Look what you're doing to this place. She follows his gaze and gasps. The silver light emanating from her skin isn't just illuminating the chamber, it's changing it. Where her power touches the stone walls, silver veins are spreading like cracks in glass. The ancient tools scattered around the room are beginning to glow with the same spectral radiance, as if her magic is awakening something that's been sleeping in the metal for decades. Most shocking of all, the black pool at the center of the chamber is transforming. The water that had been dark as night now shimmers with silver fire, and Luna can see things moving beneath the surface. Ancient symbols, carved into the stone beneath the water, blazing to life under the influence of her bloodline power. You're awakening things that should stay buried, Damien says, his voice tight with fear. Just like she did. Just like they all did. Luna stares at the transformed chamber, at the evidence of power she doesn't understand and can't control. For a moment, she sees herself through Damien's eyes, not the woman he'd fallen in love with, but a weapon waiting to destroy everything he's sworn to protect. The fear in his golden gaze cuts deeper than any rejection. I never asked for this. She breathes, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted any of this. I know. And for just a moment, Damien's voice softens with something that might be the ghost of love. But wanting doesn't matter anymore. You are what you are, Luna, and what you are is too dangerous to let live. The words hit her like a physical blow, stealing what little hope she'd been clinging to. He's not here to bring her home. He's here to end her. The man who'd whispered promises of forever in her ear just that morning has come to kill her before she can become the monster he believes she's destined to be. The silver light blazes brighter, responding to her anguish. Power crackles along her arms like lightning, and the symbols beneath the water pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Somewhere deep in the mine, she can hear stone cracking, breaking, reshaping itself under the influence of magic that's been sleeping since before her grandmother was born. 3 hours ago, I was going to be your Luna, she says, her voice breaking on each word. 3 hours ago, you told me you loved me. What changed, Damien? What made you so afraid that you'd rather kill me than fight for what we had? His jaw clenches, muscles jumping beneath his skin as he struggles with some internal battle. The elders showed me the records. The real records, not the sanitized versions they teach in school. I saw what Serafina did to the Crimson Moon Pack. An entire bloodline, gone in one night. 300 wolves, Luna. 300 souls burned to nothing because she lost control of her temper. Luna's knees give out, sending her sliding down the stone wall to land hard on the chamber floor. 300. She'd heard the stories about Serafina's final battle, but never with numbers, never with that kind of devastating specificity. And the Ironwood Pack, Damien continues, his voice relentless now. And the Mountain Ridge clan. And the Silver Lake settlement. All of them gone. All because one woman couldn't control the fire in her blood. The silver pool behind him is boiling now, steam rising from water that should be ice cold. The symbols beneath the surface are so bright, they hurt to look at, and Luna can feel something vast and ancient stirring in response to her presence. Something that recognizes the power in her veins and approves of what it senses. I'm not her, Luna repeats, but the words sound hollow even to her own ears. How can she promise control when she can feel the magic fighting to break free? How can she swear she's not dangerous when the very stones around her are transforming under her influence? Damien takes another step closer, and she can see the pain in his golden eyes. This is destroying him too, she realizes. Killing her will cost him everything he thought he wanted, but he'll do it anyway, because duty matters more than love in his world. Because the safety of the many outweighs the life of the one. I loved you, he whispers, and the past tense cuts through her like a blade. God help me, I loved you more than anything in this world, but I can't let you become what she became. I can't let you burn down everything our people have built. Luna looks up at him through the silver light that's now blazing from every surface in the chamber. The man she'd planned to spend eternity with. The alpha who'd claimed her and marked her and promised to protect her from everything in the world. Everything except himself. Then do it, she says, her voice steady despite the tears. If you're so sure I'm a monster, if you're so convinced I'll destroy everything you love, then do what you came here to do. Damien's hand moves to the silver blade at his belt, a weapon forged specifically to kill supernatural creatures, blessed by pack shamans and sharp enough to cut through shifter hide like butter. Luna's seen him use it before, during territorial disputes with neighboring packs. She knows how efficiently he wields death when he believes it's necessary, but his hand trembles as he draws the blade, and Luna realizes that maybe, just maybe, some part of him still loves the woman beneath the power. Some part that remembers holding her through the night, whispering promises about the future they'd build together. The silver light pulsing from her skin reflects off the blade, turning it into a star in his hand. For a moment, they stare at each other across the transformed chamber, to people who'd once shared everything, now separated by fear and destiny and the weight of ancient history. I'm sorry, Damien whispers, raising the blade, and in that moment, Luna Ashcroft discovers exactly what it feels like to have your heart shattered by the one person in the world who was supposed to keep it safe. The power explodes out of her. Like a dam bursting, silver fire racing through the chamber and beyond, transforming everything it touches. Stone melts and reshapes itself, water turns to liquid starlight, and somewhere in the depths of the mountain, ancient things that have slept for centuries begin to wake. Luna screams not in fear, but in rage. Rage at a world that would rather kill her than try to understand her. Rage at a mate who'd chosen duty over love. Rage at herself for believing, even for a moment, that she could ever be anything other than what she is. The mine shaft above them begins to collapse as her power tears through stone and earth, but Luna barely notices. All she can see is Damien's face, illuminated in the silver fire of her fury, as he realizes exactly what kind of power he's awakened. This is how legends are born. This is how monsters are made. Not with evil intent or malicious design, but with heartbreak and betrayal and the terrible moment when love transforms into fear. Luna Ashcroft dies in that chamber, consumed by silver fire and crushing disappointment. What emerges from the ruins is something far more dangerous, a woman with nothing left to lose and power enough to reshape the world. The last thing she hears before the mountain comes down around them is the sound of howling, not from Damien's throat, but from somewhere much deeper in the darkness. Something old and patient and very, very interested in the chaos she's just unleashed. But that's a story for another moment. Right now, in this instant of transformation, Luna stands in a chamber of silver fire and broken dreams, finally understanding what it truly means to be Moonfire born. What happens when the most powerful alpha in North America throws away his destined mate? When a billionaire shifter's pride becomes a woman's greatest nightmare. When love turns to fear and fear turns to fury, and the very foundations of the supernatural world begin to crack under the weight of one woman's broken heart. If you're ready for a tale of rejection, redemption, and a power that could reshape the werewolf world forever, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for werewolf shifter romance tales. Because this story changes everything, and Luna Ashcroft is just getting started. The silver fire dies as suddenly as it began, leaving Luna gasping in absolute darkness. The chamber around her groans and settles, stone dust raining from cracks that hadn't existed moments before. Her power has drained away like water through a broken dam, taking with it every ounce of strength she had left. She can't see Damien in the blackness, can't hear him breathing, can't feel him through their severed bond. For all she knows, she's killed the only man she's ever loved. The realization should destroy her. Instead, she feels nothing but a vast, hollow emptiness where her heart used to be. Luna drags herself through the rubble toward what she hopes is still an exit. Her dress catches on jagged stones, tearing away in strips until she's left in little more than rags. Blood seeps from dozens of cuts across her arms and legs, but she barely notices the pain. Physical wounds are nothing compared to the gaping hole in her chest where her future used to live. The tunnel ahead has partially collapsed, but there's still a gap near the ceiling just wide enough for a desperate woman to squeeze through. Luna claws her way up the pile of debris, her fingernails breaking against stone, her breath coming in sharp gasps that echo strangely in the confined space. Each movement sends fresh waves of agony through her body, but she forces herself to keep climbing. She won't die in this mountain. She won't give them the satisfaction. The gap is smaller than it looked from below, barely large enough for her shoulders. Luna has to exhale completely to wedge herself through, stone scraping against her ribs with each desperate inch of progress. Her dress, what's left of it, catches on an outcropping and tears completely away, leaving her in nothing but torn undergarments and sheer determination. When she finally tumbles out onto the mining road, the storm hits her like a physical assault. The freezing rain has turned to sleet, coating everything in a treacherous layer of ice. Luna's body temperature has dropped to dangerous levels during her time underground, and now the October night air cuts through her like knives. She tries to stand and immediately collapses, her legs refusing to support her weight. Hypothermia is setting in fast. She can feel it in the way her thoughts are becoming sluggish, the way her fingers won't respond to her commands. Her lips have gone numb, and when she tries to speak, only a croak emerges from her throat. This is how she's going to die. Not in some grand battle or tragic sacrifice, but alone on a mountain road, freezing to death in her underwear while the man she loved lies buried under tons of stone. There's something almost poetic about it, in a twisted way. The great Luna Ashcroft, heir to the Moonfire legacy, dying like any other lost hiker caught in bad weather. She's stopped shivering. That's not a good sign. Luna closes her eyes and lets herself sink into the mud, too exhausted to fight anymore. Maybe this is better. Maybe dying here, alone, is preferable to living with the knowledge of what she's done, what she is, what she'll always be. The sound of footsteps on wet gravel barely registers through her fading consciousness. Heavy boots, moving with purpose despite the treacherous conditions. Luna wants to lift her head, to see who's coming, but her body has given up responding to her will. All she can do is lie there and hope that whoever it is will be merciful enough to make it quick. The footsteps stop directly beside her head. Luna Ashcroft, the voice cuts through the storm like a blade, deep, resonant, touched with an accent she can't place. Not one of Damien's pack members. Not anyone she recognizes. Luna forces her eyes open and finds herself staring at a pair of black leather boots, expensive and well-made, but scarred with use. "I've been waiting for you." That gets her attention. Luna tilts her head back, water streaming into her eyes, and sees the most intimidating man she's ever encountered. He's massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders broad enough to block out the storm clouds above. His hair is black as midnight, pulled back in a style that emphasizes the sharp angles of his face. But it's his eyes that make her breath catch in her throat. They glow amber in the darkness, bright as molten gold and twice as dangerous. Who? Luna's voice comes out as barely a whisper, her throat raw from screaming. Who are you? Kieran Blackthorne. He says the name like it should mean something to her, like it should strike fear into her heart or send her running for the hills. Though I imagine you know that name already. She does. Every supernatural creature in North America knows the name Kieran Blackthorne, the Omega Alpha, the wolf who destroyed his own pack rather than submit to corruption, the man who vanished into the wilderness 5 years ago and hasn't been seen since. Luna tries to sit up and fails, her body trembling with more than just cold. What do you want? Kieran doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he crouches down beside her, studying her face with the intensity of a scientist examining a particularly interesting specimen. His gaze travels over her torn clothing, her bloodied skin, the silver marks her power has left along her arms like intricate tattoos. The great Damien Cross cast you out, he says finally, and there's something almost amused in his tone. His loss, the casual dismissal of her pain should anger her, but Luna finds herself oddly comforted by his matter-of-fact attitude. No pity, no false sympathy, just acknowledgement of what's happened and a suggestion that maybe, just maybe, Damien made a mistake. Kieran shrugs out of his coat, a long black duster that's probably worth more than most people's cars. He drapes it around Luna's shoulders, and the sudden warmth makes her gasp. The fabric smells like him, cedar and leather and something wild that makes her wolf stir restlessly beneath her skin. But when his fingers brush against her wrist as he adjusts the coat, they linger just a moment too long. His touch burns against her ice-cold skin, and Luna feels something she absolutely shouldn't be feeling right now. Something that has nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the way his amber eyes seem to see straight through to her soul. You're hurt, he observes, his gaze moving to the mating mark on her shoulder. Even in the darkness, she can see the way his jaw tightens at the sight of another male's claim on her. And hypothermic. We need to get you somewhere warm. Luna wants to refuse his help. Every instinct she has is screaming danger, warning her that Kieran Blackthorne is not a safe harbor in this storm. But her body has made the choice for her. She's too weak to run, too cold to argue, too broken to care about the consequences. Why? She manages to ask through chattering teeth. Why help me? Kieran's hands pause in their adjustment of his coat around her shoulders. For just a moment, something vulnerable flickers across his features, gone so quickly she might have imagined it. I know what it feels like to be thrown away, Luna. His voice drops to barely above a whisper, but the words hit her like thunderclaps. But I also know what it means to rise again. He scoops her up in his arms like she weighs nothing, cradling her against his chest with surprising gentleness. Luna should protest, should demand he put her down and explain himself. Instead, she finds herself relaxing into his warmth, her head falling against his shoulder as exhaustion finally claims her. Through the haze of approaching unconsciousness, she's dimly aware of him carrying her down the mountain road toward a vehicle she hadn't heard approaching. A black SUV with tinted windows, nearly invisible in the storm. He settles her into the passenger seat and cranks the heat to maximum, but Luna is already drifting away from the warmth and safety of the moment. The last thing she remembers before darkness takes her is the feeling of his fingers brushing her hair back from her face. And his voice, soft and strangely tender. Sleep, little flame. You're safe now. But even in her semi-conscious state, Luna knows that safety is an illusion. Kieran Blackthorne didn't become a legend by being safe. He became a legend by being dangerous in all the right ways. And as the SUV carries her away from the wreckage of her old life, she can't shake the feeling that she's just traded one kind of peril for another. The mate bond she'd felt stirring when he touched her wrist should be impossible. She's already been claimed, already been marked, already been rejected. But the ancient magic in her blood doesn't seem to care about human concepts like impossibility. It recognizes something in Kieran Blackthorne, something that calls to the deepest parts of her nature, something that whispers this is the wolf she was always meant to find. The thought should terrify her. Instead, as consciousness slips away entirely, Luna finds herself hoping that when she wakes up, those amber eyes will still be there to catch her when she falls. Dreams and memories blend together in Luna's unconscious mind, dragging her back through time to the moment everything changed. 12 hours ago, just 12 hours, though it feels like a lifetime has passed since she stood in the Shadowmere Pack Council chamber, wearing her ceremonial Luna dress and believing her future was written in starlight. The great hall had been decorated for celebration. White roses and silver ribbons everywhere, candles burning in crystal holders that caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the polished marble floors. Pack members filled every seat, their faces bright with anticipation for the ceremony that would officially crown her as their Luna. Children clutched wildflowers picked especially for the occasion, and the elderly wolves sat in places of honor, ready to witness history in the making. Luna had felt beautiful that night, powerful in the way only a woman secure in her place in the world could feel. The midnight blue gown had been custom-made in Milan, cut to showcase the elegant line of her throat where Damien's mating mark rested like a badge of honor. Her dark hair had been styled in an intricate updo that took 3 hours to perfect, woven through with silver threads that caught the candlelight with every movement. She'd practiced her acceptance speech for weeks, memorizing every word about duty and protection and the sacred bond between Alpha and Luna. Standing at the back of the hall, waiting for her cue to walk down the center aisle, she'd felt like a bride on her wedding day. Nervous but certain, excited but reverent, ready to step into the role she'd been born to fill. Damien had looked magnificent at the front of the chamber, wearing the traditional ceremonial robes of his position, midnight black fabric that emphasized his imposing frame, silver embroidery that caught the light and made him seem larger than life. His golden eyes had found hers across the crowded room, and the smile he'd given her had made her heart skip beats. "My Luna," he'd mouthed silently, and Luna had felt the mate bond sing between them like a violin string perfectly tuned. She'd taken her first step down the aisle when Elder Matthias had cleared his throat. "Before we proceed," the ancient wolf had said, his voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent chamber, "there is a matter of bloodline that must be addressed." Luna's feet had faltered on the marble, some primitive instinct warning her that danger lurked in those carefully chosen words. But Damien had nodded encouragingly from the front of the room, clearly expecting whatever revelation was coming. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known what the elder was about to say. "Our research into Luna Ashcroft's genealogy has revealed complications." Elder Matthias had unrolled a scroll that looked ancient enough to crumble at a touch. "She is not merely of noble blood, as we previously believed. She carries the Moonfire legacy." The reaction had been immediate and devastating. Pack members gasped and drew back as if Luna had suddenly burst into flames. Mothers pulled their children closer, and the elderly wolves began muttering prayers under their breath. The word Moonfire echoed through the chamber like a curse, repeated in whispers that grew louder with each retelling. Luna had stood frozen in the center aisle, still holding the bouquet of white roses, watching her entire world crumble around her. She'd known this moment would come eventually. Deep in her heart, she'd always known her family's secrets couldn't stay buried forever. But she'd hoped how she'd hoped that love would be stronger than fear. "The Moonfire bloodline has been dormant for 3 generations," Elder Matthias had continued, his voice taking on the cadence of a funeral dirge. "But genetic analysis confirms beyond doubt that Luna Ashcroft carries the active markers. She is capable of manifesting the same destructive powers that nearly tore our world apart." All eyes had turned to Damien then, waiting for his response. Luna had held her breath, clinging to the desperate hope that he would defend her, that he would stand by the woman he'd claimed to love beyond reason. Through their mate bond, she'd felt his shock, his confusion, his rapidly building fear, but not his love. Not anymore. Is this true? Damien's voice had been cold as Arctic wind, cutting through the ceremonial warmth like a blade. He'd looked at Luna as if seeing her for the first time, golden eyes filled with something that might have been revulsion. Luna had started to speak, to explain, to beg him to remember what they meant to each other. But the words had died in her throat. Under the weight of his stare, "Answer me." The alpha command in his voice had hit her like a physical blow, forcing her wolf to submit even as her human heart shattered. "Do you carry the Moonfire bloodline?" Luna had wanted to lie. Every survival instinct she possessed had screamed at her to deny it, to laugh it off as a mistake, to do whatever it took to salvage the future she'd built her entire identity around. But the mate bond demanded honesty, and her wolf refused to deceive her chosen alpha. "Yes," she'd whispered, the word barely audible in the cavernous space. The silence that followed had been deafening. Even the candle flames had seemed to stop, flickering, as if the very air in the chamber had turned solid with shock. "She carries the bloodline of Seraphina Moonfire," Elder Matthias had pronounced, and the name had sent fresh waves of terror through the assembled pack. The she-wolf who burned 3 packs to ash in a single night, who called down silver fire from the heavens themselves and used it to incinerate everything in her path. The most dangerous supernatural creature ever born. Luna's bouquet had slipped from nerveless fingers, white roses scattering across marble like drops of blood on snow. Through the mate bond, she'd felt Damien's love transforming into something else, something cold and calculating and utterly without mercy. "The Moonfire legacy cannot be allowed to manifest again," Elder Matthias had continued, his ancient voice gaining strength with each terrible word. "For the safety of all supernatural creatures, this bloodline must end here." That's when her own family had delivered the killing blow. Luna's mother, Luna Ashcroft, had risen from her seat in the front row. The woman who'd raised her, who'd braided her hair and kissed her scraped knees and whispered bedtime stories about brave princesses, who always found their happy endings. "We have kept her power suppressed for 25 years, Elena had said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "But we always knew this day would come. The bloodline is too strong, the magic too volatile. She cannot be allowed to take the Luna position." The betrayal had hit Luna harder than any physical blow could have. Her own mother, standing before the entire pack and condemning her to exile. The woman who'd spent Luna's entire childhood assuring her that she was normal, that the strange dreams and flickering lights were just imagination, now revealing that every moment of her life had been built on lies. "Luna Ashcroft," Damien had said, and his voice had held all the authority of his alpha position. No warmth, no recognition of what they'd shared, just cold judgment. "You have deceived this pack about your true nature. You have put every wolf under my protection at risk by hiding your bloodline." Luna had tried to speak, to explain that she'd never meant to deceive anyone, that she'd been suppressing her power so long she'd almost believed it didn't exist. But Damien had continued as if she were already a ghost. "The council has made its decision." He'd looked directly at her then, golden eyes flat as winter ice. "You are not suitable to serve as Luna of the Shadowmere pack. Your bloodline is too dangerous, your power too unstable." The formal words of rejection had been coming. Luna had felt them building in the mate bond like pressure before an explosion. But she'd been unprepared for the casual cruelty in his voice when he delivered them. "I, Damien Cross, Alpha of the Shadowmere pack, formally reject you as my mate and Luna." The words had hit her like physical blows, each syllable tearing another piece from her heart. "You are hereby exiled from this territory and forbidden from returning." The mate bond had snapped like a rubber band stretched past its breaking point. Luna had gasped and doubled over as physical pain tore through her chest, the severing leaving wounds that would never fully heal. Around her, pack members had begun to chant low, rhythmic words in the old language that roughly translated to, "Cast out the darkness, preserve the light." Her Uncle Thomas had approached then, silver restraints in his hands. The same man who'd taught her to ride a bike and helped her with her homework was preparing to chain her like a rabid animal. "Please," Luna had whispered, the only word she could force past the pain in her throat. "Please don't do this." But mercy had been a luxury none of them could afford. Not when faced with the possibility of another Serafina Moonfire. The memory shifts and Luna finds herself reliving older wounds, deeper shames. She's 13 again, standing in the ruins of what used to be the pack house's east wing. Silver fire flickers around her hands, beautiful and terrible, while adults shout and point and drag children away from the destruction she's caused. Her first shift had been nothing like the graceful transformation other young wolves experienced. Instead of the controlled change from human to wolf, Luna's body had erupted in celestial flame. The power had poured out of her like water from a broken dam, silver fire racing along the wooden beams and antique furnishings until half the building was consumed. She'd stood in the center of the inferno, completely unharmed but utterly terrified, watching pack members flee from the monster she'd become. The fire had responded to her emotions, growing brighter with her panic, spreading faster with her fear, until only Elder Matthias's quick thinking had saved the rest of the building. That night had changed everything. No more sleepovers with pack children. No more family gatherings where Luna was allowed to participate. No more normal childhood experiences of any kind. Instead, there had been lessons in suppression, meditation techniques designed to push her power so deep it might never surface again. "You must learn to be smaller," her mother had whispered during those long, painful sessions. "You must learn to hide what you are, or they'll never let you stay." Luna had tried so hard to be smaller. She'd spent years making herself less powerful, less noticeable, less threatening. She'd learned to walk quietly, speak softly, take up as little space as possible in any room. She'd trained herself to suppress every spark of the fire that lived in her veins, until even she'd begun to believe it was gone. The irony wasn't lost on her now. All those years of hiding, of trying to be acceptable, of molding herself into someone safe enough to love, and it had all been for nothing. The moment her true nature was revealed, even the man who'd claimed to adore her had thrown her away like contaminated waste. In her dreams, Luna feels herself stirring back to consciousness. Warmth surrounds her, soft and comforting, so different from the harsh cold of the mountain road. She's lying on something that feels like heaven, a bed with sheets that probably cost more than most people's cars. In a room that smells like cedar and leather and safety, she opens her eyes slowly, taking in her surroundings with the careful caution of a wild animal in unfamiliar territory. The cabin around her is rustic but clearly expensive, all exposed wood beams and river stone, with a massive fireplace crackling cheerfully in one corner. Someone has dressed her in clothes that aren't her soft cotton pants and an oversized sweater that smells like Kieran Blackthorne. The man himself sits in a chair beside the bed, reading what looks like a very old book. He's changed out of his storm-soaked clothes into dark jeans and a black Henley that emphasizes the powerful lines of his shoulders. In the firelight, the scars on his throat are more visible, old wounds that speak of violence survived and enemies defeated. "You're awake," he says without looking up from his book. "How do you feel?" Luna tries to sit up and immediately regrets it as pain shoots through her ribs. "Like I was hit by a truck, or buried under a mountain." "Close enough." Kieran finally looks at her, amber eyes assessing. "You've been unconscious for 6 hours. I was beginning to think hypothermia had done more damage than I'd realized." The casual way he mentions her near-death experience should be comforting, but Luna finds herself tensing instead. This man saved her life, yes, but that doesn't mean she's safe. Nothing about Kieran Blackthorne suggests safety. "Why did you help me?" she asks, pulling the blankets higher around her chest. The question has been haunting her since she first heard his voice on that mountain road. Kieran closes his book and sets it aside, giving her his full attention. "Because I know what it feels like to be thrown away by people who are supposed to love you." The simple honesty in his voice hits her harder than any elaborate explanation could have. Luna stares at him, taking in the controlled stillness of his posture, the way his hands rest loose and ready on the arms of his chair. Everything about him speaks of violence held in check, of power that could be unleashed at a moment's notice. "The pack you destroyed," she says slowly. "They were your family, my father's pack," Kieran corrects, and there's something darker than winter in his tone. "And I didn't destroy them. I freed them from a corruption that would have consumed them all." Luna wants to ask for details, but something in his expression warns her that those memories are still too raw to touch. Instead, she focuses on the immediate present, on the man who pulled her from the storm and brought her to safety. "You know what I am," she says. "It's not a question. I know what you could become," Kieran replies. "There's a difference." As if summoned by their conversation, silver sparks begin to dance along Luna's arms. She tries to suppress them, falling back on years of training and conditioning, but her control is shattered. The power responds to her emotional state, and right now she's drowning in shame and fear and the terrible certainty that she'll never be safe anywhere. Luna expects Kieran to recoil, to show the same fear and revulsion that had filled Damien's eyes. Instead, he leans forward in his chair, studying the silver fire with scientific interest. "Beautiful," he murmurs, and the word hits Luna like a physical caress. "They made you ashamed of something extraordinary." The sparks grow brighter, responding to his acceptance like flowers turning toward sunlight. For the first time in her life, Luna doesn't fight the power. She lets it flow along her skin, lets it paint patterns of light and shadow on the cabin walls, lets herself feel the ancient magic that's been locked away for so long. Kieran reaches out slowly, telegraphing his movement so she has time to pull away if she wants to. When she doesn't retreat, he brushes his fingers along her forearm where the silver fire dances brightest. His touch doesn't burn, doesn't hurt. Instead, it soothes the wild energy, channeling it into something controlled and purposeful. "How?" Luna breathes, staring at the place where his skin meets hers. Damien's touch had always made her power recoil, forcing it deeper into hiding. But Kieran's presence seems to calm the magic, to give it direction and focus. "Practice," he says simply. "I've had a lot of practice dealing with dangerous things." The comment should be insulting, but coming from him it feels like understanding instead. Luna realizes that for the first time in her adult life, she's sitting with someone who isn't afraid of what she might do. Someone who sees the fire beneath her skin and doesn't immediately start planning her destruction. "The Moonfire bloodline," she says carefully, testing his reaction. "You know the stories. I know the official version," Kieran replies. "Serafina Moonfire, the mad she-wolf who burned the world. The cautionary tale they tell young wolves about the dangers of unchecked power." Luna nods, her throat tight with familiar shame. 3 packs, 300 wolves, all because she couldn't control herself. "Is that what you believe?" Kieran's voice is gentle, but there's steel underneath. That she was out of control? The question catches Luna off guard. She's never considered any alternative to the story she grew up with. Never questioned the narrative that painted her great-grandmother as a monster driven mad by power. What else could it have been? She asks. Kieran stands and moves to a bookshelf near the fireplace, selecting a leather-bound volume that looks ancient enough to be a museum piece. He brings it back to the bed and opens it to a page marked with a black ribbon. "The personal journal of Marcus Ironwood, Alpha of the Mountain Ridge Pack," he says, handing her the book. "Written during the Blood Moon War, 3 days before his pack was destroyed." Luna takes the journal with trembling hands, afraid of what she might find. The writing is faded but still legible, cramped script that speaks of urgency and fear. "She came to us not as a conqueror, but as a protector. The Shadow Court had infiltrated our ranks, turned our own wolves against us. Half my pack was already lost to their corruption when Serafina Moonfire arrived with her silver fire. She offered to cleanse the darkness from our souls, to burn away the poison before it could spread to other territories." Luna's hands shake as she reads, the official story crumbling with each word. "We accepted her help, God forgive us, we begged for it. And when the silver flames came, they burned away only what was already rotten. The wolves who died were no longer truly alive, they had become puppets of something far worse than death. Serafina Moonfire didn't destroy 3 packs. She saved what was left of the supernatural world. The journal slips from Luna's nerveless fingers as the implications hit her. Everything she's been told about her bloodline, every reason she's been given to fear her own power, has been built on lies. They rewrote history, she whispers, staring at Kieran with new understanding. They made her into a monster to justify their fear. Fear is easier than gratitude, Kieran says, settling back into his chair, especially when what you're grateful for reminds you how close you came to losing everything. Luna thinks about her childhood, about the years of suppression and shame and training to be smaller, about the way her own family had looked at her after her first manifestation, not with love and support, but with terror and determination to lock away whatever they saw as broken in her. They made me believe I was dangerous, she says, silver fire flickering brighter around her hands. Made me think love meant hiding who I really am. And what do you think now? Kieran's amber eyes hold her steadily, and Luna sees something in them that takes her breath away. Not fear, not pity, not the calculating assessment she's grown used to from other wolves. Acceptance. Complete, unconditional acceptance of who and what she is. I think, Luna says slowly, letting the silver flames dance higher, that maybe I've been asking the wrong question all my life. Which is? Luna meets his gaze and feels something shift deep in her chest. Not the desperate, clinging need for approval that had defined her relationship with Damien, but something steadier, something that feels like coming home. I've been asking if anyone could love me despite what I am, she says, silver fire blazing brighter as the truth settles in her bones. But maybe the real question is whether anyone could love me because of what I am. Kieran's answering smile is slow and dangerous and full of promise. Now, you're asking the right question, little flame. 3 days pass before Kieran mentions the whispering stones. 3 days of Luna recovering her strength, learning to let her power flow without shame, discovering what it feels like to exist in a space where she doesn't have to make herself smaller. 3 days of stolen glances and careful distance, of conversations that dance around the growing tension between them while never quite acknowledging what's building in the charged air. But tonight is different. Tonight, the full moon hangs heavy in the sky, and Kieran's restlessness finally boils over into action. There's something you need to see, he says, finding her on the cabin's back porch where she's been watching silver fire dance between her fingers like living jewelry. Something that will explain why I was waiting for you on that mountain road. Luna looks up at him, taking in the way moonlight catches the sharp angles of his face, the controlled tension in his powerful frame. He's dressed for travel, dark jeans, heavy boots, a leather jacket that probably cost more than most people's cars. But it's his eyes that capture her attention. They're blazing with an intensity she hasn't seen before. Amber fire that seems to reflect something beyond normal wolf instincts. Where are we going? She asks, even as she stands to follow him. Over the past 3 days, she's learned to trust Kieran's judgment about most things. He hasn't led her astray yet, to a place that's been waiting for you longer than you've been alive. The cryptic answer should frustrate her, but Luna finds herself intrigued instead. There's something almost reverent in Kieran's tone, a careful respect that speaks of sacred ground and ancient secrets. She follows him to the black SUV, settling into the passenger seat as he starts the engine with practiced efficiency. They drive in comfortable silence through mountain roads that seem older than civilization itself. Luna watches the landscape pass outside her window, dense forests that haven't been touched by human development, valleys where mist clings to ancient trees like ghostly fingers, peaks that scrape the belly of the star-filled sky. This is wild country, the kind of place where old magic still thrums in the very stones. After an hour of winding through increasingly remote terrain, Kieran finally stops the vehicle at what looks like nothing more than a game trail disappearing into the forest. But when Luna steps out of the SUV, she feels it immediately, a pull. In her bones, a recognition that goes deeper than conscious thought. The Moonfire bloodline in her veins responds to this place like metal to a magnet. You feel it, Kieran observes, watching her face in the moonlight. It's calling to me, Luna whispers, one hand pressed to her chest where something ancient and powerful is stirring to life. What is this place? The Whispering Stones, the first sacred ground established by our kind, before pacts and territories and politics divided us into warring factions. Kieran shoulders a pack that clinks with what sounds like camping supplies. Before your bloodline was driven into hiding, he leads her into the forest along a path that's barely visible in the darkness. But Luna doesn't need to see clearly, her feet know where to go, guided by instincts older than memory. The trees. Around them are massive, twisted oaks that have stood sentinel here for centuries. Their branches create a canopy so thick that only scattered fragments of moonlight penetrate to the forest floor. As they walk deeper into the woods, Luna becomes aware of carvings in the tree trunks, symbols that seem to shift and dance in her peripheral vision, ancient runes that speak of power and protection and promises kept across generations. The air itself pulses with otherworldly energy, heavy with the weight of rituals performed and oaths sworn by wolves who have been dust for longer than recorded history. How old is this place? Luna asks, her voice hushed with instinctive reverence. Old enough that no one remembers who first carved the stones. Old enough that the magic here predates any pack's claim to territory. Kieran's voice carries the same respectful quiet. This is where the first Moonfire Luna received her crown, where the ancient compact between our bloodlines was sealed. They emerge from the forest into a circular clearing that takes Luna's breath away. 7 massive stones stand arranged in a perfect circle, each one taller than a man and covered in carvings so intricate they seem to move in the moonlight. At the center of the circle sits a flat altar stone, its surface polished smooth by countless hands and weathered by centuries of wind and rain. But it's what happens when Luna steps into the circle that truly stuns her. The moment her feet cross the boundary marked by the standing stones, her Moonfire power explodes to life. Silver flame races along her arms and crown her head like a living diadem. But this time, the magic feels different. Controlled. Purposeful. Instead of the wild, unpredictable surges she's always experienced, the power flows through her with the precision of water through a carefully designed channel. The ancient carvings on the stones begin to glow in response to her presence, silver light racing along grooves cut by hands that have been still for generations. The symbols tell a story, she can feel it more than read it, understanding flowing into her mind like inherited memory. The eclipse prophecy, Kieran says, moving to stand beside the altar stone. His own eyes are blazing now, reflecting the silver fire that surrounds Luna like a cosmic aurora. Read it. Luna approaches the central altar, drawn by compulsions she doesn't fully understand. The surface of the stone is covered in writing not carved, but somehow burned into the rock itself, as if someone had written with liquid fire. The language is archaic, but her bloodline translates the meaning directly into her consciousness. When shadow meets light in the hour of greatest need, the chosen shall unite what was torn asunder. The Moonfire heir shall rise crowned in silver flame, and the true Alpha shall stand at her side, marked by sun and sworn by destiny. As Luna reads the words aloud, her voice taking on an otherworldly resonance that echoes strangely in the circular space, something incredible happens. The birthmark on her shoulder, a crescent moon she's carried since birth, begins to glow, with the same silver radiance as her power. The mark grows warm, then hot, then blazingly bright, visible even through the fabric of her shirt. Your turn, she whispers to Kieran, understanding flooding through her as ancient knowledge awakens. In her blood, Kieran moves with the fluid grace of a predator, shrugging out of his leather jacket to reveal the powerful lines of his torso. And there, burned into the skin over his heart, is a mark that perfectly mirrors hers, not a moon, but a blazing sun, its rays extending in precise geometric patterns that would align perfectly with her crescent if they were pressed together. The sun and moon, Luna breathes, staring at the mark that's beginning to glow with golden fire. Shadow and light, bonded pairs, Kieran confirms, his voice rough with emotions she can't quite name. Chosen by forces older than any pack, any territory, any political alliance. The ancient magic recognized what we would become before we were even born. Luna reaches out without conscious thought, her fingers hovering just above his mark. She can feel the heat radiating from his skin, can sense the way his sun mark responds to the proximity of her moon. When she finally makes contact, pressing her palm flat against his chest, the connection that flares between them is unlike anything she's ever experienced. Visions flood her mind, not her own memories, but glimpses of possible futures, fragments of destiny waiting to unfold. She sees herself standing before assembled packs, silver crown blazing on her head, while wolves kneel in acknowledgement of her authority. She sees great battles against shadows that rise from the earth itself, ancient evils that have been sleeping beneath the world for millennia. She sees two wolves, one black as midnight, one silver as starlight, standing together against a darkness that threatens to swallow everything their kind has built. But underlying all the visions is a voice, neither male nor female, speaking with the authority of prophecy itself. The Moonfire returns when the world needs her most. The heir awakens when the shadow stirs. The true alpha claims his mate when destiny demands completion. Luna staggers back from the altar, gasping as the visions release their hold on her consciousness. The silver fire around her blazes higher, responding to the flood of prophetic knowledge, and she can feel power coursing through her veins like molten starlight. I can't be this person, she whispers, staring at Kieran with wide, terrified eyes. I can barely control my own power, and you're telling me I'm supposed to lead all supernatural creatures? I'm supposed to fight some great darkness that's been sleeping for centuries? Kieran approaches her slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. The golden fire of his mark has spread across his chest in intricate patterns that complement the silver flames dancing along her arms. Destiny doesn't ask if you're ready, Luna, he says, his voice carrying absolute certainty. It demands you become ready. But what if I'm not strong enough? What if I fail? The fears that have haunted her since childhood rise up like a tide, threatening to drown her in self-doubt. What if I become the monster they always said I was? Kieran's hands frame her face, his touch grounding her in the present moment. Do you trust me? The question cuts through her panic like a blade. Luna stares into his amber eyes, seeing strength and certainty and something that might be love. Over the past 3 days, this man has shown her nothing but acceptance. He's helped her understand her power instead of fearing it, revealed truths about her bloodline instead of perpetuating lies, stood by her side when the rest of the world would rather see her burn. Yes, she whispers, the word carrying more weight than any formal vow. Then trust me when I tell you that you are not your great-grandmother's mistakes. You are not the corruption that destroyed those ancient packs. You are Luna Moonfire, heir to a bloodline of protectors, born to stand between our world and the darkness that would consume it. His words settle into her bones like truth finally recognized. Luna feels the silver fire around her stabilize. No longer wild and unpredictable but flowing with purpose and direction. The ancient magic of the Whispering Stones recognizes her acceptance, and the very air in the clearing hums with approval. But even as she embraces her destiny, questions remain. The prophecy speaks of a true alpha, Luna says, her gaze moving between Kieran's mark and her own. But Damien was my chosen mate first. The bonds of destiny, are they stronger than the bonds of choice? Kieran's expression darkens, and Luna sees something predatory flicker in his amber eyes. Damien Cross chose his path when he rejected you in front of his pack. The ancient magic doesn't recognize political alliances or convenient matches. It recognizes what's written in blood and bone and starlight. As if summoned by their conversation, the stones around them pulse with renewed energy. New symbols appear on their surfaces, not carved, but burned into being by the same force that created the original prophecy. Luna approaches the nearest, Stone, drawn by compulsions that feel like destiny made manifest. The new writing tells a story she's never heard before. A story of the first supernatural civilization, when werewolves ruled not through strength alone but through divine right. When the Moonfire bloodline served as arbiters between packs, their silver flames burning away corruption and their wisdom guiding decisions that affected entire regions. We were kings once, Luna breathes, reading accounts of justice dispensed and territories blessed by Moonfire authority. Not just wolves, rulers, until the great betrayal, Kieran says, his voice heavy with ancient grief. When lesser alphas grew jealous of Moonfire power and conspired to destroy your bloodline from within, the stones show her the truth, not the sanitized version taught in modern pack schools, but the brutal reality of political assassination and magical corruption. The Shadow Court hadn't been some external threat that Seraphina Moonfire fought against. They'd been the conspiracy of alphas who'd used dark magic to turn her own pack against her, forcing her to burn away the corruption even as it destroyed her heart. She wasn't mad, Luna whispers, understanding flooding through her as the full scope of the betrayal becomes clear. She was trying to save them, and the effort killed her, Kieran confirms. But not before she hid the true history in places like this, protected by magic that would only respond to her true heir. Luna turns away from the stones, overwhelmed by the weight of legacy and expectation. Her bloodline isn't just powerful, it's royal. She's not just a werewolf with unusual abilities, she's the last heir to a throne that was stolen through treachery and lies. They'll never accept it, she says, thinking of the modern pack structure with its elected councils and democratic processes. The other alphas will never bow to Moonfire authority again. They will when the alternative is extinction. Kieran's voice carries grim certainty. The darkness the prophecy speaks of isn't metaphorical, Luna. Something has been sleeping beneath our world for centuries, waiting for the moment when supernatural defenses are weakest. The ancient protections are failing. The old compact is broken. Without the Moonfire crown to unite our people, he doesn't finish the sentence, but he doesn't need to. Luna can see the truth in the visions still echoing through her mind packs. Divided, territories contested, supernatural creatures turning on each other while a greater threat rises from the depths. I have to claim the crown, she says, the words feeling like stepping off a cliff into unknown space. We have to claim it, Kieran corrects, moving to stand beside her before the altar stone. The prophecy is clear shadow and light, working together. You can't do this alone, and neither can I. Luna looks at him for the first time since the visions began. The golden fire of his mark has spread across his entire torso now, intricate patterns that speak of ancient bloodlines and destiny fulfilled. He's not just any alpha who happened to find her on a mountain road. He's been prepared for this moment, just as much as she has. How long have you known, she asks, about the prophecy? Since I was old enough to read the family records. Kieran's smile is rueful. About you specifically? The moment I felt your power call to mine through the mate bond, 3 days before Damien's rejection ceremony, the admission hits Luna like a physical blow. You felt it? Even while I was marked by another? Destiny doesn't care about political convenience, Kieran says, echoing his earlier words. The ancient magic recognized what we are to each other long before either of us was ready to accept it. Luna stares at him, pieces of a puzzle she didn't know existed finally clicking into place. That's why you were waiting for me. You knew I'd run, knew I'd end up on that road. I knew Damien would reject you the moment he learned what you are. Men like him are too afraid of real power to recognize its value. Kieran's voice carries contempt for the alpha who'd thrown away something precious out of fear. I also knew you'd need someone who understood what it means to stand against the world. The silver fire around Luna blazes higher as understanding dawns. This wasn't chance or coincidence that brought them together. This was destiny, patient and inexorable, waiting for the right moment to claim what had always belonged to it. The true alpha, she says, finally understanding the full implications of the prophecy. Not the strongest or the richest or the most politically connected. The one chosen by the ancient magic to stand beside the Moonfire heir. The one willing to burn down everything that stands between his mate and her throne, Kieran confirms, and the promise in his voice makes Luna's breath catch. She looks around the clearing one more time, taking in the ancient stones and their blazing symbols, the altar where countless ceremonies have sealed the fate of their kind, the very air that thrums with magic older than civilization. This is where her real life begins, not as Luna Ashcroft, the rejected mate who spent her life hiding her true nature, but as Luna Moonfire, heir to a crown that was stolen and a power that could save or damn their entire world. The choice, as always, will be hers to make. But as Kieran steps closer, his mark pulsing in perfect rhythm with her own, Luna realizes that for the first time in her life, she won't be making that choice alone. The ancient magic has finally brought its chosen together. Now the real work begins. Dawn breaks over the whispering stones with the subtle violence of a blade cutting silk. Luna feels the approaching threat before she sees it, her newly awakened senses picking up vibrations in the earth that speak of many feet moving in coordinated formation. The ancient magic that flooded her consciousness just hours ago now screams warnings through every nerve ending, telling her that the sacred ground is about to be violated by forces that have no right to be here. Kieran tenses beside her, his nostrils flaring as he catches scents carried on the morning wind. "We have company," he says, his voice dropping to the dangerous growl of an alpha preparing for war. "And they're not here for a friendly conversation." Luna's silver fire flares involuntarily around her hands as she recognizes the lead scent, threading through the forest air. Familiar, devastating. The musk and leather and cold authority that had once meant safety and love, now twisted into something that makes her wolf recoil in instinctive fear. Damien Cross has found them. The first shadow wolves emerge from the tree line like nightmares given form. Massive beasts with intelligence blazing in their eyes, moving with the coordinated precision of soldiers who have trained together for years. Luna counts at least 20 of them, all in their wolf forms, all focused on the clearing where she stands with silver fire crackling around her like a living crown. But it's the wolf at their head that makes her blood turn to ice. Damien's wolf form is everything she remembers and more. Black as midnight, easily the size of a small horse, with golden eyes that burn with fury and something that might be wounded pride. Even across the clearing, she can feel the weight of his alpha presence pressing against her consciousness, demanding submission from a wolf he still considers his property. The transformation that brings him back to human form is seamless and terrifying in its controlled power. One moment he's a creature of fang and claw, the next he's standing naked and magnificent in the morning light, his perfectly sculpted body a reminder of everything she once thought she wanted. Someone tosses him clothes from the pack, and he dresses with economical movements that speak of absolute confidence in his own authority. "Luna," Damien's voice carries across the clearing with the force of an alpha command, designed to make her wolf bow and submit without conscious thought. "Step away from Blackthorne and come home, home." As if the pack house where he rejected her in front of everyone she'd ever cared about could ever be home again. As if the territory where she'd been marked as dangerous and cast out could ever offer her sanctuary. "She has no home with you anymore, Cross." Kieran's response cuts through the morning air like a blade, his own alpha authority rising to meet Damien's challenge. "You made that clear when you threw her away." Luna feels caught between two opposing forces, each trying to claim her loyalty through sheer dominance. But the ancient magic still flowing through her veins rejects both attempts at control. She belongs to herself now, marked by destiny rather than politics, crowned by prophecy rather than convenience. Beta Marcus steps forward from among the shadow wolves, his human form lean and dangerous in the way of career soldiers. Luna remembers him from countless pack gatherings, always at Damien's right hand, always ready to enforce his alpha's will through whatever means necessary. "Return our wayward Luna," Marcus says, his voice carrying the formal cadence of official pack business. She belongs to Shadowmere, marked and claimed according to ancient law. Kieran moves to stand protectively in front of Luna, his massive frame blocking her from the hunting party's direct view. The gesture should feel possessive, controlling, but instead it feels like partnership, like someone finally standing between her and the world's attempts to cage her. She belongs to no one but herself, Kieran says, and the words hit Luna with the force of absolute truth. And she's under my protection now. The scent of aggression begins to fill the clearing as wolves on both sides prepare for violence. Luna can smell adrenaline and testosterone and the metallic edge of supernatural abilities being called to the surface. The sacred ground of the Whispering Stones has become a battleground, ancient peace shattered by modern politics. Protection? Damien's laugh holds no humor, only the cold amusement of a predator who knows he holds all the advantages. From the alpha who murdered his own father, who destroyed his pack rather than accept proper authority. Luna sees Kieran's hands clench into fists, his control cracking just enough to reveal the violence he keeps leashed beneath his civilized exterior. The story of his past is clearly a wound that still bleeds, a source of pain that Damien is more than willing to exploit. My father was corrupted by the same darkness that your precious counsel serves, Kieran replies, his voice steady despite the rage Luna can feel radiating from his skin. I did what needed to be done to save what was left of my people, by killing them all. Damien's words are calculated cruelty, designed to break Kieran's composure and force a mistake. Just like Luna will kill everyone around her when her power inevitably turns destructive. The Moonfire bloodline is a plague, Blackthorne, and you're harboring patient zero. The casual dismissal of her worth, the reduction of her entire existence to a disease that needs to be contained, hits Luna harder than any physical blow could have. She'd thought she was past caring what Damien thought of her, but hearing him speak about her like she's something contaminated opens wounds she'd thought were finally healing. Silver fire blazes higher around her hands as her emotional control wavers. The ancient stones respond to her power, their carved symbols beginning to glow with renewed energy. She's not the frightened, rejected mate who fled into the storm 3 days ago. She's something far more dangerous now. Careful, Cross, Kieran warns, amber eyes beginning to glow with the approach of his own transformation. You're standing on sacred ground, speaking blasphemy against the bloodline that ruled when your ancestors were still cowering in caves. The challenge hangs in the air between them like a blade waiting to fall. Luna can feel the tension building toward a breaking point, violence held back only by the thinnest threads of civilized restraint. That's when the reinforcements arrive. Alpha Victoria Steele emerges from the forest with her own hunting party, followed by 2 other pack leaders Luna recognizes from regional gatherings. The presence of so many alphas in one place can only mean one thing: this isn't just about reclaiming a wayward pack member. This is about containing what they see as a threat to the established order. Luna Ashcroft, Victoria calls, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. By order of the Council of Alphas, you are to be taken into protective custody for assessment. Protective custody. Luna almost laughs at the euphemism. They want to cage her, study her, find ways to use her power for their own ends or destroy her. If she proves too difficult to control, she's too dangerous to run free. Victoria continues, moving to stand beside Damien in a show of unified authority. The Moonfire bloodline must be contained before it can cause the kind of devastation we've seen before. Luna sees the trap closing around them. 4 alpha-led hunting parties, at least 60 wolves in total, all focused on taking her back to whatever fate the council has planned. Even Kieran's legendary reputation won't be enough to fight those kinds of numbers, but as the political pressure mounts, Luna begins to understand the real game being played. This isn't about her safety or the protection of supernatural society. This is about power, pure and simple. Tell them the truth. Damien, Luna says, her voice carrying clearly across the clearing despite the danger surrounding them. Tell them why you really want me back. Damien's golden eyes flicker with something that might be guilt before hardening back into cold authority. "You're my marked mate. That's reason enough. Your rejected mate," Luna corrects, silver fire blazing brighter as ancient fury awakens in her blood. "The one you threw away in front of your entire pack when you learned what I really am." She can see the truth dawning on some of the watching wolves. Damien's hunting party shifts restlessly as they realize their alpha's motivations might not be as pure as he's claimed. "He needs my power," Luna continues, her voice gaining strength as the silver fire around her grows into a corona of celestial radiance. "The Council is choosing a supreme alpha, and he knows he can't win without the legitimacy that comes from a Moonfire mate." The accusation hits its target. Luna sees Damien's careful composure crack, sees the flash of desperate ambition in his golden eyes before he covers it with renewed aggression. "Enough," he snarls, his human form beginning to blur at the edges as his wolf fights for control. "You will come with us, willingly or otherwise." That's when the clearing erupts into chaos. Shadow wolves pour through the trees from every direction, moving to surround the whispering stones and cut off any possibility of escape. Luna's power flares in response to the threat, silver fire crackling between her fingers like lightning waiting to be unleashed. The ancient symbols carved into the standing stones begin to pulse with answering light, as if the sacred ground itself is preparing for war. But Kieran has his own reinforcements. The forest around the clearing comes alive with movement as his pack emerges from concealment. They're outnumbered 3-1, but there's something different about these wolves. Something that speaks of absolute loyalty earned rather than demanded, of bonds forged in battle rather than politics. Luna recognizes the type immediately. These are the survivors, the outcasts, the wolves who've been thrown away by their original packs for various reasons and found new purpose under Kieran's leadership. They move with the desperate efficiency of fighters who know they're probably going to die but have chosen their cause worth dying for. "Stand down, Blackthorne," Victoria warns, her own transformation beginning as claws extend from human hands. "You're outnumbered. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Kieran's answering smile is all teeth and promise of violence. "I've been outnumbered before." It didn't end well for the other side. The first attack comes from Beta Marcus, his wolf form launching itself across the clearing toward Kieran with supernatural speed. But Kieran is ready for him, moving with the fluid grace of a predator in his element. His own transformation is barely visible. One moment he's human, the next he's something that makes every other wolf in the clearing look small by comparison. Kieran's wolf form is midnight black, shot through with veins of gold, easily twice the size of any normal shifter. His eyes blaze with an inner fire that speaks of bloodlines older than recorded history, and when he meets Marcus's attack head-on, the collision sends shockwaves through the sacred ground. Combat erupts throughout the clearing as political tensions explode into physical violence. Claws and fangs clash in brutal harmony while supernatural abilities crackle through the air like elemental storms. Luna finds herself at the center of a battle she never wanted, silver fire blazing around her like a beacon as wolves fight and die for the right to claim her. She tries to control her power, to direct it away from the combatants, but the magic responds to her emotional state. And right now, she's drowning in fury and terror and the devastating realization that people are dying because of what she is. A shadow wolf breaks through the melee, jaws snapping toward Luna's throat with killing intent. Her power reacts instinctively, silver fire erupting from her hands to strike the attacker in mid-leap. The wolf hits the ground as a pile of ash, completely incinerated by celestial flame that burns hotter than any earthly fire. The sight of such casual destruction sends a ripple of fear through both sides of the battle. Even Kieran's loyal pack members edge away from her, reminded that Luna Moonfire is not someone who needs protection, she's someone who could destroy them all without conscious thought. "You see?" Damien calls out, his massive black wolf form circling the edge of the combat. "This is what the Moonfire bloodline does. It burns everything it touches." The words hit Luna like physical blows. echoing every fear she's carried since childhood. Maybe they're right. Maybe she is too dangerous to be free. Maybe the world would be safer if she surrendered herself to whatever fate the council has planned. But then she sees Kieran take a claw across the ribs, golden blood flowing from wounds inflicted by wolves fighting to capture her. She sees his pack members falling one by one, overwhelmed by superior numbers and political authority they never chose to challenge. These wolves are dying for her. Kieran, the first person to ever see her as something other than a threat, is bleeding for her. And all because she was selfish enough to believe she deserved happiness. The realization crystallizes into absolute certainty. She won't let anyone else suffer for her choices. Stop, Luna calls out, her voice carrying across the battlefield with the authority of her awakened bloodline. All of you, stop fighting. The silver fire around her blazes into a column of celestial radiance that reaches toward the morning sky. Ancient power flows through her voice, compelling obedience from every wolf in the clearing regardless of their pack allegiance. I'll go with you, Damien, she says, the words tearing pieces from her heart with each syllable. I'll submit to the council's assessment. But this ends now. Kieran's anguished howl echoes through the mountains as he realizes what she's doing. Through their newly awakened bond, Luna feels his rage and desperation and the terrible knowledge that he's powerless to stop her choice. Luna, no, he pleads, shifting back to human form despite the wounds that paint his torso in gold. Don't do this. We can fight them. We can watch your pack die for my mistakes. Luna finishes, silver fire dimming as she brings her power under control. I won't be responsible for any more death. She steps away from Kieran, each movement feeling like stepping off a cliff into endless darkness. But this is the only choice that saves lives, the only option that keeps the man she's come to love from paying the price for her existence. This isn't over, she tells Damien as Marcus moves to bind her hands with silver restraints. Whatever the council is planning, whatever you think you're going to accomplish by dragging me back, it won't work. Damien's golden eyes hold no trace of the man who once claimed to love her. We'll see about that. As they lead her away from the sacred ground, Luna looks back once at Kieran. He's standing among the whispering stones like a broken god, amber, eyes blazing with fury and promise and something that looks like hope. I won't be anyone's prisoner again, she vows, her voice carrying clearly through the morning air. And when I come back, it won't be as the frightened girl you rejected. It will be as Luna Moonfire, heir to the silver crown. The last thing she sees before the forest swallows them is Kieran's face, marked by wounds and determination and absolute certainty that this separation is temporary. He will come for her. The ancient magic that binds them together guarantees it. But first, Luna has to survive whatever the Council of Alphas has planned for the last heir to a bloodline they fear above all others. The real battle is just beginning. 3 days in Shadowmere's stronghold feels like 3 lifetimes. Luna sits in what they call a guest room, but what amounts to a gilded cage, silver bars hidden behind elegant wallpaper, locks that respond only to alpha commands, windows that don't open and offer views of nothing but endless forest. The Council of Alphas has made their position clear. She's too valuable to kill and too dangerous to release. They've run every test imaginable on her blood, her power, her genetic markers. Teams of supernatural researchers poke and prod and measure, treating her like a specimen rather than a person. They want to understand the Moonfire legacy, to find ways to harness it for their own purposes or neutralize it if she proves uncooperative. But what they don't understand is that Luna Ashcroft died in the Whispering Stones 3 days ago. The woman sitting in their carefully appointed prison is Luna Moonfire, heir to a crown they stole and a power they can't comprehend. And Luna Moonfire refuses to be anyone's experiment. The new moon rises dark and empty above the stronghold, casting shadows that seem deeper than normal darkness. Luna has been waiting for this moment, planning for it, drawing strength from the bond that connects her to the man who showed her what it means to be truly seen. Kieran's presence flows through that connection like a river of molten gold, steady and warm and absolutely certain. He's been waiting for her, just as she knew he would be. The mate bond doesn't lie, even when everything else is built on deception. Luna places her palm against the silver-reinforced window and lets her power flow. Not the wild, uncontrolled surge of her childhood, but focused energy channeled with surgical precision. The metal heats under her touch, then melts, then flows away like liquid moonlight until there's nothing but an opening large enough for a determined woman to slip through. The drop to the ground is 40 feet, but Luna's bloodline grants her more than just fire. She lands in the courtyard garden with feline grace, her bare feet making no sound on manicured grass. The guards patrolling the perimeter don't notice the shadow that slips between ornamental hedges and disappears into the wilderness beyond. Freedom tastes like mountain air and possibility. Luna runs through the forest in her human form, following instincts older than conscious thought. The mate bond pulls her northwest, toward hidden valleys and secret places where ancient magic still flows. Strong, her stolen prison clothes white cotton that marks her as a protected individual tear on thorns and branches, but she doesn't slow down. She can feel Kieran getting closer with each mile, his presence growing stronger in her mind until it's like a beacon calling her home. The hidden waterfall appears through the trees like something from a fairy tale. Moonlight streams through the canopy to illuminate cascading water that looks like liquid silver, pooling in a natural basin surrounded by moss-covered stones. Steam rises from the water's surface, speaking of hot springs heated by geothermal forces deep beneath the mountain. And there, sitting on a boulder beside the pool, is the man who's been haunting her dreams for 3 days. Kieran looks like a fallen angel in the moonlight, all sharp angles and dangerous beauty. He's shirtless, his powerful torso marked by recent wounds that are already healing with supernatural efficiency. But Luna can see the deeper scars, old marks that speak of violence survived and prices paid in blood and pain. He doesn't look surprised to see her. If anything, there's a satisfaction in his amber eyes that suggests he's been expecting her arrival down to the minute. "I felt your pain across the miles," he says without preamble, his voice rough with emotions held too long in check. "Every test they ran, every violation they committed." The mate bond doesn't lie, Luna. The simple acknowledgement of what she's endured hits her harder than any sympathy could have. Kieran doesn't offer empty comfort or meaningless reassurances. He just states the truth that her suffering became his suffering, that the connection between them transcends physical distance. "You stayed," Luna whispers, moving closer to the pool where mist swirls like living smoke. "You could have left, found another path, but you stayed. Where else would I go?" Kieran's smile holds depths of meaning that make her chest ache. "You're my mate, Luna, chosen by forces older than any pack, any politics, any convenient arrangement. I don't abandon what belongs to me." The possessive words should trigger her defenses, but coming from Kieran they feel different. Not like ownership, but like partnership. Like someone finally claiming her not as property but as an equal. Luna sinks down onto the boulder beside him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. The waterfall provides a backdrop of white noise that makes the moment feel separate from the world, protected from the chaos they've left behind. "Tell me," she says, studying the scars that map his history across muscle and bone. "Tell me what really happened to your pack." Kieran is quiet for so long that Luna begins to think he won't answer. When he finally speaks, his voice carries the weight of old grief and older fury. "My father was alpha of the Thornwood pack for 30 years. Good leader, strong wolf, loved by everyone who mattered." Kieran's hands clench into fists, knuckles going white with tension. "But he made a deal with the wrong people. Hunters, the kind who see all supernatural creatures as threats to be eliminated." Luna's breath catches as the implications hit her. He betrayed his own kind. Worse, he betrayed specific individuals, wolves whose only crime was being born with abilities that scared normal people. Kieran's amber eyes blaze with remembered rage. Names, locations, weaknesses. He gave them everything they needed to carry out systematic assassinations. The waterfall's roar seems to grow louder, as if nature itself recoils from the magnitude of such betrayal. Luna reaches out without conscious thought, her fingers finding the worst of the scars on Kieran's throat. "He tried to kill you," she says, reading the story written in healed flesh. "When I confronted him about the murders, he chose his human allies over his own son." Kieran's voice drops to barely above a whisper. The pack elders refuse to believe their beloved Alpha could be capable of such betrayal. "They branded me a liar, a traitor, a son who'd lost his mind to jealousy and ambition." Luna traces the jagged scar with gentle fingers, feeling the way Kieran's breathing deepens at her touch. "So you did what had to be done. I killed my own father to save innocent humans who were about to be slaughtered. I destroyed the hunter network he'd built and burned the evidence of his collaboration." Kieran's laugh holds no humor, only bitter irony. "The pack called me a monster. The survivors I saved called me a hero. Neither label fit what I actually was." "Which was what?" Kieran catches her hand, pressing her palm flat against the scar that nearly ended his life. "A son who loved his people more than his family. A wolf who chose justice over loyalty. A man who learned that sometimes doing the right thing means losing everything you thought you wanted." The honesty in his words creates an ache in Luna's chest that has nothing to do with physical pain. She sees herself reflected in his story, another outcast, another wolf forced to choose between safety and conscience. "I've never let anyone see my true power," she confesses, the words spilling out before she can stop them. "Not really. Even with you, I've been holding back, terrified of what I might do if I let the fire burn freely." Kieran's free hand moves to cradle her face, thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "What are you afraid of?" "That I'll prove them right. That I am too dangerous to love." Luna's voice breaks on the admission, years of shame and self-doubt finally finding voice. "That the moment someone sees what I'm truly capable of, they'll look at me the way Damien did, like I'm something contaminated." Kieran's response is to shift closer, eliminating the space between them until Luna can feel his heartbeat against her ribs. "Show me," he says, the words a challenge and an invitation wrapped together. "Kieran, show me what scares you so much. Show me the power that makes alphas tremble and councils conspire." His amber eyes hold her steadily, reflecting absolute trust. "Show me who Luna Moonfire really is." The request should terrify her. Instead, Luna feels something like relief flooding through her chest. For the first time in her life, someone is asking to see all of her, not despite her power, but because of it. Luna closes her eyes and stops fighting the fire in her veins. Silver flames erupt from her skin like a star being born, but this time she doesn't try to contain them or direct them away from Kieran. She lets the celestial fire flow around both of them, wrapping them in a cocoon of liquid starlight that turns the waterfall into a backdrop of crystalline beauty. The power that flows through her now is nothing like the desperate surges of her childhood or the controlled demonstrations she'd shown the council researchers. This is the full magnitude of the Moonfire legacy, ancient magic that could reshape reality itself if she chose to wield it. But instead of destruction, Luna creates. The silver fire dancing around them takes shape, wolves made of living light that run through the air above the pool, stars that bloom and fade in patterns that tell the story of her bloodline, flowers that blossom from pure energy and fill the night with impossible beauty. Through it all, Kieran doesn't flinch. He watches the display with the reverence of someone witnessing a miracle, his amber eyes reflecting silver flames like captured lightning. "Beautiful," he breathes, the word carrying more weight than any formal declaration. "They made you ashamed of something absolutely beautiful." Luna lets the power flow between them, around them, through the mate bond that connects their souls. For the first time, she feels Kieran's own abilities responding to hers, not fire, but shadow, ancient magic that complements rather than competes with her light. Golden darkness flows from his skin to mingle with her silver flames, creating patterns of such perfect balance that Luna gasps at the beauty of it. This is what the prophecy meant by shadow and light working together. Not a battle for dominance, but a harmony that makes both forces stronger. Your power isn't a curse, Luna, Kieran says, his voice rough with emotion. It's a gift the world needs. Don't let their fear convince you otherwise. Luna opens her eyes to find him staring at her with an intensity that makes her breath catch. The space between them has shrunk to nothing, their bodies aligned in perfect synchronization, silver and gold magic weaving around them like visible music. How do you do that? She whispers, studying the way his darkness seems to soothe her fire instead of fighting it. Practice, Kieran says, the same word he'd used days ago in his cabin. But now Luna understands what he really means. I've spent 5 years learning to work with dangerous things instead of trying to control them. His fingers thread through her hair, silver-streaked strands that catch the light of her own power. Luna feels herself leaning toward him, drawn by forces that have nothing to do with magic and everything to do with the way he sees her, not as a threat or a tool or a problem to be solved, but as a partner. Their lips nearly meet before Luna pulls back, fear winning over desire at the last possible moment. I can't, she gasps, even as every cell in her body screams in protest. Not yet. Not when everything is so complicated. Kieran finishes, but there's no disappointment in his voice. Just understanding and the kind of infinite patience that comes from absolute certainty. I know, little flame. I can wait. But the almost kiss changes something between them. The mate bond that's been growing stronger since the Whispering Stones suddenly blazes into full awareness, connecting them on levels that transcend the physical. Luna can feel Kieran's emotions flowing through the link, desire and protective fury and something that might be love, all wrapped around an unshakable conviction that she's worth fighting for. This is what it should feel like, Luna realizes, the words spilling out as understanding dawns. Being chosen, not claimed. Wanted for who I am, not what I can provide. Kieran's answering smile is soft and fierce and absolutely devastating. Now you're learning. They spend the rest of the night by the waterfall, sharing stories and comfortable silences, letting the mate bond deepen with each passing hour. Kieran tells her about the wolves he's gathered, outcasts and survivors, the thrown away and forgotten who've found new purpose under his leadership. Luna shares her own history of hiding and shame, the years of making herself smaller to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold someone like her. As dawn approaches, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Kieran helps Luna practice channeling her power, not suppressing it the way her family taught her, but directing it with conscious intent. Stop thinking of it as something that needs to be contained, he instructs, watching as she creates a small flame that dances in her palm without burning. Start thinking of it as a tool that responds to your will. The breakthrough moment comes when Luna manages to create a flower made of silver fire, delicate petals that hold their shape without consuming themselves, beauty without destruction. She stares at the impossible bloom, tears streaming down her cheeks as years of conditioning finally begin to crack. I can control it, she whispers, wonder transforming her voice. I can actually control it. You always could, Kieran says, settling beside her on the moss-covered stone. You just needed someone to show you that control doesn't mean suppression. Through the mate bond, Luna feels his absolute confidence in her abilities, his unshakable belief that she's capable of anything she sets her mind to. It's intoxicating and terrifying and utterly addictive, this feeling of being seen and accepted and valued for exactly who she is. I'll fight the entire world to keep you safe and free, Kieran says, the words carrying the weight of a solemn vow. Luna meets his amber gaze and sees her own determination reflected there. Then let's fight together, the promise hangs between them like a bridge spanning the gap between who they've been and who they're becoming. For the first time in her life, Luna can envision a future where she's not hiding her true nature, where her power is a source of strength rather than shame. The prophecy makes sense now. She's not meant to be controlled by others or to control others in turn. She's meant to lead, to use her abilities to protect rather than destroy, to become the Luna her bloodline was always meant to produce, and she won't be doing it alone. The man beside her, scarred by his own battles and strengthened by his own choices will stand with her against whatever forces seek to cage or corrupt or destroy what they're building together. Tell me about your vision, Luna says, leaning into Kieran's warmth as the sun climbs higher over the mountains. The world you want to create. Kieran's arms come around her, solid and safe and absolutely right. A world where wolves like us aren't outcasts but protectors. Where power is used to defend the innocent rather than maintain political control. Where someone's worth isn't determined by how well they fit into existing structures. Luna closes her eyes and lets herself truly imagine its supernatural creatures working together instead of against each other. Her abilities used to heal the rifts between packs rather than widen them, a future where love doesn't require hiding essential parts of yourself. It's possible, she says, feeling the truth of it settle into her bones. All of it. We just have to be strong enough to make it happen. We will be, Kieran promises, his voice carrying absolute conviction. Together, we will be. As the morning sun burns away the last of the mist, Luna Moonfire makes a choice that will change everything. She's done running, done hiding, done letting other people's fears dictate her actions. The Council of Alphas wants to study her like a laboratory specimen. The established packs want to use her power for their own political games. The entire supernatural world wants to force her into molds that were never designed to hold someone like her. Let them try. Luna Moonfire is going home. And when she arrives, it won't be as a prisoner or a refugee or a tool to be wielded by others. It will be as exactly what the prophecy declared her to be, the heir to a crown that was stolen and a power that could reshape their entire world. The real revolution is about to begin. 2 weeks of stolen moments at hidden waterfalls and secret clearings have transformed Luna into someone she barely recognizes. Gone is the frightened refugee who fled Damien's rejection. In her place stands a woman who understands her own power, who's learned to channel silver fire with surgical precision, who's discovered what it means to be loved for exactly who she is. The summer solstice gathering represents the perfect opportunity to announce her return to supernatural society, not as a victim or a rogue, but as Luna Moonfire, rightful heir to a legacy stolen by fear and politics. Every major pack in North America will be present for the ancient ritual, creating an audience worthy of the revelation she and Kieran have planned. Are you ready for this? Kieran asks, adjusting the hood of her concealment cloak as they approach the ceremonial grounds. The massive stone amphitheater has been carved into the side of Mount Cascade, its terrace seating capable of holding thousands of wolves. Tonight, every seat will be filled. Luna touches the silver pendant hanging around her neck, a family heirloom her grandmother smuggled out during the first purge of Moonfire artifacts. I've been ready my entire life. I just didn't know it until now. The confidence in her voice isn't manufactured or forced. Over the past 14 days, Luna has learned to trust the fire in her veins instead of fearing it. Under Kieran's patient guidance, she's discovered that her power responds to intent rather than emotion. That control comes from acceptance rather than suppression. More importantly, she's learned that she doesn't have to face the world's judgment alone. They enter the amphitheater separately, blending into crowds of pack members and supernatural dignitaries who've traveled from across the continent for this most sacred of gatherings. Luna keeps her hood up and her power carefully contained, just another anonymous wolf among thousands. The ritual circle at the center of the amphitheater blazes with torchlight and ceremonial fires. Ancient symbols carved into the stone floor pulse with energy that speaks of traditions older than recorded history. This is where pack alliances are forged, where territorial disputes are resolved, where the supernatural world comes together to honor the forces that bind their society together. Tonight, it will also be where Luna reclaims her birthright. She finds a seat in the middle tier, close enough to make her presence felt when the moment comes but far enough from the action to avoid immediate notice. Around her, wolves whisper in excited anticipation of the evening's main event, the formal selection of a supreme alpha to unite the fractured pack system under single leadership. Damien Cross is the obvious front-runner. His wealth, his territory, His political connections have positioned him perfectly for the role. But Luna knows something the assembled crowds don't. Without a Moonfire mate to legitimize his claim, Damien's support base isn't as solid as it appears. The ceremony begins with traditional invocations, pack shamans calling upon ancient spirits to bless the gathering and witness whatever oaths are sworn in the sacred circle. Luna lets the familiar rhythms of old magic wash over her, drawing strength from connections that predate the political maneuvering happening around her. High Priestess Morgana takes the center stage, her voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater as she recites the opening rituals. Luna has known Morgana since childhood. The ancient she-wolf served her family for decades before the purges scattered the Moonfire household to the winds. Seeing her now, draped in ceremonial robes and speaking words of power, sends a warm flood of memory through Luna's chest. Morgana was there when Luna took her first steps, when she spoke her first words, when she manifested her first sparks of silver fire. If anyone in this gathering can be trusted to recognize the legitimacy of Luna's claim, it's the priestess who helped raise her. The formal presentations begin with pack leaders stepping forward to state their cases for leadership. Alpha Victoria Steele speaks of unity through strength, advocating for military expansion to protect supernatural interests. Alpha Robert Kane focuses on economic development, promising prosperity through careful integration with human markets. Then, Damien takes the circle, and Luna's blood runs cold at the sight of him. He's magnificent in the torchlight, every inch the powerful alpha the crowd expects to lead them. His midnight black ceremonial robes are cut to emphasize his imposing frame, and when he speaks, his voice carries the authority of someone born to command. Fellow wolves, Damien begins, his golden eyes scanning the assembled crowds with practiced charisma. We face challenges that require more than political solutions. We need leaders capable of wielding the kind of power that can reshape our world. A murmur runs through the amphitheater as pack members lean forward to catch every word. This isn't the speech anyone expected from the pragmatic businessman. Ancient forces are stirring, Damien continues, his voice taking on the cadence of prophecy. Darkness that has slept for centuries is beginning to wake. Our old ways of handling threats, negotiation, compromise, diplomatic solutions will not be sufficient for what's coming. Luna's heart begins to race as she realizes where this is heading. Through their severed mate bond, she can feel echoes of Damien's emotions, not love or regret, but cold calculation and ruthless ambition. We need the power of the old bloodlines, Damien declares, raising his voice to carry through every tier of the amphitheater. We need magic that can stand against the shadows threatening our world. That's when Beta Marcus steps into the circle, dragging a bound figure behind him. Luna's breath catches as she recognizes the prisoner, a young she-wolf with silver-streaked hair and familiar features, dressed in the white robes of a condemned criminal. For a terrifying moment, she thinks they've somehow captured another member of her bloodline. Then the illusion drops, and Luna realizes she's looking at herself. Not literally, the bound woman is someone else entirely, probably some unfortunate wolf who bears a passing resemblance to Luna's general build and coloring. But she's been transformed through makeup and magical disguise to look exactly like the wanted rogue Luna who's been evading capture for weeks. Behold, Marcus calls out, his voice cracking like a whip through the suddenly silent amphitheater. The rogue Luna who threatens us all. Luna Ashcroft, last heir of the cursed Moonfire bloodline. The reaction is immediate and devastating. Thousands of wolves surge to their feet, some shouting for justice, others calling for immediate execution. The orchestrated chaos feels like a riot waiting to happen, carefully managed to appear spontaneous while serving Damien's purposes perfectly. Luna sits frozen in her seat, watching the elaborate trap unfold around her. This isn't a trial or a formal challenge, it's political theater designed to justify whatever Damien has planned next. This dangerous rogue has been corrupting our young people with promises of power, Damien continues, his voice cutting through the crowd's outrage. She seeks to overthrow the natural order, to claim authority that was rightfully stripped from her bloodline generations ago. The fake Luna struggles against her bonds, terror clear in her eyes as she realizes what's happening to her. She tries to speak, probably to protest her innocence, but silver chains around her throat prevent any sound from emerging. Luna's power stirs in response to the injustice unfolding before her, silver fire flickering beneath her skin. She forces herself to remain calm, to wait for the right moment to reveal the truth. Rushing the circle now would only validate Damien's claims about her being dangerous and unstable. However, Damien says, raising his hand to quiet the crowd, "I am prepared to show mercy." The amphitheater falls silent, thousands of wolves hanging on his every word. Luna Ashcroft was once my chosen mate, marked and claimed according to ancient law. Damien's voice takes on a tone of noble suffering, as if her very existence causes him pain. Despite her bloodline's corruption, I am willing to take responsibility for her rehabilitation. Luna's stomach drops as she realizes the full scope of his manipulation. He's positioning himself as both her captor and her savior, the strong alpha willing to bear the burden of containing a dangerous rogue for the good of all supernatural society. With the council's permission, Damien continues, I will reclaim my mate bond with Luna Ashcroft. Her power will be bound to my will, ensuring it can never again threaten innocent wolves. The crowd erupts in approval. Thousands of voices raised in support of Damien's merciful solution. Luna watches in horror as pack leaders nod their agreement. Seeing the political brilliance of a plan that eliminates a threat while increasing Damien's power base, that's when the second devastating blow falls. A familiar figure steps into the circle beside Damien, and Luna's heart shatters as she recognizes her own mother. Luna Ashcroft looks older than Luna remembers, her dark hair now shot through with silver and her face marked by lines of grief and worry. But she stands with perfect posture beside the man who destroyed her daughter's life, lending her presence to whatever atrocity is about to unfold. I am Luna Ashcroft, Luna's mother and the last surviving member of her pack council, she announces, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. I stand before you tonight to formally surrender my daughter to Alpha Cross's authority. The words hit Luna like physical blows, each syllable tearing away another piece of her heart. Her own mother, the woman who raised her, who claimed to love her, who spent years teaching her to hide her true nature, is now publicly abandoning her to save face with the assembled packs. I'm sorry, daughter, Luna continues, looking directly at the bound imposter as if she's actually addressing Luna. But the greater good requires sacrifice. Your bloodline has brought enough suffering to our world. Uncle Thomas emerges from the crowd then, carrying silver restraints that look heavy enough to bind a dragon. Luna's childhood protector, the man who taught her to ride bikes and helped her with homework, approaches the fake Luna with the methodical efficiency of an executioner. The imposter's eyes go wide with terror as she realizes these people actually intend to go through with whatever they have planned. She struggles against her bonds with desperate strength, but the silver chains hold firm. Luna can't take any more. She starts to rise from her seat, power blazing beneath her skin as righteous fury builds in her chest. But a hand on her shoulder stops her cold. Not yet, Kieran's voice whispers in her ear. Wait for my signal. She hadn't heard him approach, hadn't sensed his presence through the mate bond. But he's there beside her now, solid and warm and absolutely furious. Through their connection, she feels his rage matching her own, barely contained violence held in check by strategic thinking. They have an innocent woman, Luna hisses under her breath. I know, and we'll save her. But if you reveal yourself now, you'll be walking into a trap with no way out. Kieran's hand tightens on her shoulder. Trust me, little flame. I have a plan. Down in the circle, Damien has begun the ritual binding that will supposedly link the fake Luna's power to his will. High Priestess Morgana reads from ancient texts, her voice taking on the otherworldly resonance of true magic. But as the ritual progresses, Luna begins to notice inconsistencies in the old words. Morgana isn't reading a binding ceremony, she's reciting something else entirely, something that makes Luna's blood run cold as she recognizes the archaic phrasing. The Moonfire will consume the darkness, Morgana intones, her voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater. By becoming darkness, the twisted prophecy sends shockwaves through Luna's consciousness. They're not trying to bind her power to Damien's will, they're planning to corrupt it, to turn the Moonfire legacy into something monstrous that serves their political agenda. You see? Damien calls out to the assembled crowds as silver fire begins to flow from the imposter's skin. Even now, her power responds to darkness. She is exactly what the ancient warnings described, a weapon waiting to destroy everything our ancestors built. The false magic display is masterfully crafted, probably created by pack shamans working in concert to produce something that looks like corrupted Moonfire energy. To untrained eyes, it would be completely convincing, but Luna knows her own bloodline's signature, and what's flowing from the bound woman isn't her power. It's an illusion designed to justify whatever final atrocity they have planned. With her energy bound to my will, Damien continues, I will have the strength necessary to protect our people from the coming darkness. The Moonfire legacy will finally serve the greater good instead of threatening it. The crowd roars its approval, thousands of wolves saluting their new Supreme Alpha and his supposedly tamed weapon. Luna watches the political theater with growing horror, realizing that Damien has outmaneuvered her completely. He never intended to simply capture her. He's planning to use her as a scapegoat for whatever authoritarian measures he implements as Supreme Alpha. Every act of oppression, every abuse of power, every violation of supernatural law will be justified as necessary to contain the Moonfire threat. That's when the third and most devastating betrayal reveals itself. Through the crowd's cheering, Luna hears a familiar voice raised in support of Damien's ascension. She turns in her seat and sees pack members she grew up with, wolves, who played with her as a child, families who welcomed her into their homes. Moonfire must die, they chant, their voices blending into a unified roar of hatred. Moonfire must die. These aren't strangers who fear her reputation or politicians who see her as a threat to their power. These are people who know her personally, who've shared meals and celebrations and quiet moments with her, and they're calling for her death with the enthusiasm of a sporting event. The realization that even her own people have been turned against her hits Luna harder than any physical blow could have. Everything she once considered home, her family, her pack, her place in supernatural society, has been poisoned by fear and political manipulation. She starts to hyperventilate, overwhelmed by the scope of the betrayal surrounding her. Through their mate bond, she feels Kieran's presence like an anchor in the storm, the only solid thing in a world that's been turned upside down. But even that anchor begins to drag when she sees movement in the circle below. Kieran steps into the torchlight, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Every head in the amphitheater turns toward him as he approaches the center of the ceremonial space. Damien Cross, he calls out, his voice carrying the authority of an alpha despite being vastly outnumbered. I challenge the legitimacy of these proceedings. A murmur runs through the crowd as pack members recognize the infamous Kieran Blackthorne. Some shrink back in fear, others lean forward in bloodthirsty anticipation of violence. Blackthorne. Damien replies, his golden eyes blazing with triumph. How good of you to join us. I was wondering when you'd reveal yourself. The casual confidence in Damien's tone sends ice through Luna's veins. He's not surprised by Kieran's appearance, he was expecting it. Counting on it. You're harboring a dangerous rogue, Damien continues, moving to stand beside the bound imposter. Surrender Luna Ashcroft to proper authority, and I might be willing to spare your pack from the consequences of your poor judgment. Kieran's laugh holds no humor, only grim understanding of the trap closing around them. You know that's not the real Luna Ashcroft. This entire ceremony is built on lies and political theater. Prove it, Damien challenges. Show us the real Luna, if you claim to know where she is. The ultimatum hangs in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Luna realizes with crystalline clarity that this is the moment everything has been building Toward? Damien has maneuvered them into a position where they have no good choices: reveal Luna and walk into his trap, or let an innocent woman suffer for crimes she didn't commit. Choose Blackthorne, Damien says, his voice carrying clearly through the silent amphitheater. Her life, or your pax. Luna watches Kieran's face through their mate bond, feeling his desperate search for alternatives, his rage at being backed into an impossible corner. For one heartbreaking moment, she sees doubt flicker in his amber eyes, not doubt about her, but doubt about whether saving her is worth the cost to everyone else. The hesitation lasts only seconds, but it's long enough to shatter something fundamental in Luna's chest. Even Kieran, the man who showed her what it meant to be truly seen and accepted, is calculating whether she's worth the price of protecting her. The realization that she's completely alone in this world hits Luna like a physical blow. Family, pack, mate, everyone she's ever trusted has either betrayed her outright or hesitated when she needed them most. But in that moment of absolute devastation, something else awakens in Luna's consciousness. Not the careful, controlled power Kieran taught her to channel, but the raw, primal fury of a bloodline that once ruled through divine right. The ancient magic in her veins doesn't care about political maneuvering or strategic thinking. It only recognizes that its heir has been threatened, betrayed, and abandoned by those who should have protected her. Silver fire explodes from Luna's skin with the force of a star being born. The concealment cloak disintegrates instantly, burned away by celestial flames that reach toward the night sky like accusations made manifest. Every wolf in the amphitheater turns toward her position as power beyond their comprehension floods the ancient space. You wanted my power? Luna's voice echoes through the amphitheater with otherworldly resonance, carrying clearly to every tear despite the chaos erupting around her. Take it all. She doesn't try to control the magic flowing through her. She doesn't channel it or direct it or shape it into anything civilized. She simply lets the full magnitude of the Moonfire legacy pour out of her like water through a broken dam. The effect is immediate and terrifying. Silver fire races through the amphitheater's carved channels, following ancient ley lines built into the stone itself. The ceremonial circle erupts in flames that burn cold and bright, forcing everyone in the center to flee or be consumed. But Luna's fury isn't random destruction. Her power seeks out lies, deception, corruption, burning away the false magic surrounding the imposter, revealing Damien's carefully constructed theater for what it really is. The bound woman's disguise melts away like makeup in rain, showing a terrified stranger who bears no resemblance to Luna whatsoever. The fake Moonfire energy dissipates like smoke, leaving behind only ordinary wolf magic artificially enhanced by pack shamans. Most devastating of all, Luna's fire begins to burn through the invisible threads connecting her to Damien through their mate bond. She'd thought the connection was severed when he rejected her, but now she realizes the truth. He'd kept just enough of the link intact to track her movements, to influence her emotions, to use their ancient connection as a leash. I kept just enough of the bond to track you. Damien's voice carries through the chaos, no longer bothering to hide his manipulation. To use you. Every moment of freedom you thought you had was an illusion I allowed. The admission hits Luna like a physical blow, but it also frees her from the last vestiges of doubt about his true nature. The man she once loved never existed. He was always the calculated politician standing before her now, willing to use any weapon to achieve his goals, including her. Luna's silver fire blazes hotter as she begins the process of burning away every trace of Damien's influence on her soul. The corrupted mate bond screams as it dies, sending waves of agony through both their consciousness. But Luna welcomes the pain. Better to hurt than to be controlled. The Moonfire returns when the world needs her most. She calls out, her voice carrying the authority of prophecy fulfilled. And the world needs her now. The ancient words trigger something in the amphitheater's foundations, awakening magic that's been sleeping in the carved stone for centuries. Symbols begin to glow along the terrace seating, telling the true history of supernatural civilization, not the sanitized version taught in modern schools, but the reality of Moonfire rule and the betrayal that destroyed it. Pack members throughout the amphitheater stare in shock as their own history rewrites itself before their eyes. Some flee in terror, others fall to their knees in recognition of power they'd forgotten could exist. But Luna's attention is focused on the center of the circle, where the corrupt ritual has collapsed into chaos. The innocent woman who'd been bound in her place lies free now, her silver chains melted by celestial fire. High Priestess Morgana kneels beside her, checking for injuries while casting protective wards, and Damien Cross stands in the ruins of his political theater, golden eyes blazing with fury at seeing his carefully laid plans destroyed by the woman he'd tried to use as a weapon. "You think this changes anything?" he snarls, his human form beginning to blur as his wolf fights for control. "You're still alone, Luna. Still the last of a dying bloodline. Still a monster that no one will ever truly love." The words are designed to break her spirit, to make her retreat back into the shame and self-doubt that kept her contained for so long. But Luna Moonfire is not the frightened girl who fled into the storm weeks ago. She stands in a ring of silver fire, crowned by power that could reshape their entire world, and for the first time in her life she feels completely at peace with who and what she is. "You're right about one thing, Damien," she says, her voice carrying clearly through the burning amphitheater. "I am the last of my bloodline. But that doesn't make me weak." Silver flames dance higher around her as ancient magic recognizes the truth she's finally embracing. "It makes me the only one left who remembers what we were before you made us afraid of our own power." Luna Moonfire stands alone in the center of a burning world. No longer anyone's victim, no longer anyone's weapon, no longer anyone's shame. She is exactly what she was always meant to be, a force of nature unleashed, a bloodline reborn, a revolution waiting to reshape everything their kind thought they knew about power. The real war is about to begin. And for the first time since it all started, Luna knows exactly which side she's fighting for. Her own. 1 week passes in relative silence after the amphitheater burns. Luna retreats to the Whispering Stones, not to hide but to prepare. The ancient, sacred ground welcomes her like a daughter coming home, the carved symbols blazing to life whenever she walks among them. Here, surrounded by the true history of her bloodline, she finally understands what it means to be Luna Moonfire rather than Luna Ashcroft. She's no longer the frightened woman who fled rejection and betrayal. The silver fire that crowned her in the amphitheater has become as natural as breathing, flowing through her veins like liquid starlight. When she moves, reality itself seems to bend around her presence, recognizing the return of power that was always meant to rule. Kieran finds her on the 7th morning, sitting beside the central altar stone with silver flames dancing around her like living jewelry. He approaches carefully, amber eyes reflecting wariness and wonder in equal measure. "The packs are sending emissaries," he reports, settling onto the moss-covered stone beside her. "Every alpha who called for your death is now begging for an audience." Luna doesn't look up from the ancient text spread before her, prophecies and histories written in languages that predate modern civilization. Her grandmother's journals, recovered from hiding places scattered across the continent, tell stories that reframe everything she thought she knew about the supernatural world. "Let them beg," she says, her voice carrying harmonics that make the standing stones hum in response. They had their chance to choose cooperation. They chose fear instead, through the mate bond that's grown stronger since the amphitheater. Luna feels Kieran's complex mix of emotions. Pride in her transformation, concern for what she's becoming, and underneath it all, desperate love for the woman who's transcending every limitation their world tried to place on her. "There's something else," Kieran says, his voice dropping to the tone he uses for genuinely dangerous news. "Reports are coming in from the Northern Territories. Packs are going dark, entire communities disappearing overnight." That gets Luna's attention. She looks up from her reading, silver eyes blazing with power that makes Kieran's wolf bow in instinctive submission. "Disappearing how? No bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty." like everyone simply walked away from their lives simultaneously. Kieran's hands clench into fists. The few survivors describe shadows moving independently of their sources, darkness that whispers in voices they recognize. Ancient knowledge floods through Luna's consciousness as her bloodline's genetic memory awakens. Stories passed down through generations about enemies that predate the pack system, threats so dangerous that even the Moonfire Lunas struggled to contain them. The Shadow King, she whispers, the name tasting like ashes on her tongue. He's waking up. Kieran goes very still beside her. That's impossible. The Shadow King was destroyed centuries ago. Imprisoned, Luna corrects, rising to pace among the standing stones as terrible understanding dawns. Not destroyed. Imprisoned beneath the sacred mountains, bound by magic that was supposed to last forever. She moves to the altar stone and places both hands on its surface, letting her power flow into the ancient conduits carved by her ancestors. The response is immediate, visions flooding her mind with images of battles fought in darkness, of wolves corrupted by shadow, of a malevolent intelligence that turns love into hatred and hope into despair. The bindings are breaking. Luna breathes, horror and determination warring in her chest. Every act of betrayal, every moment of division among our people weakens the seals. The amphitheater ceremony, all that hatred and fear focused in one place, it gave him the crack he needed. Through the visions, Luna sees the Shadow King's prison deep beneath Mount Cascade. Chains of silver light that have held for centuries are dissolving link by link, eaten away by the corrosive power of supernatural creatures turning against each other. And she sees something else that makes her blood run cold. The Shadow King isn't just breaking free, he's already begun claiming vessels among the living. Wolves whose hearts are dark enough, whose ambitions are corrupt enough, make perfect puppets for an entity that feeds on the worst impulses of sentient beings. Damien, Luna whispers, understanding hitting her like a physical blow. He's in. Damien. The realization explains everything: the calculated cruelty at the amphitheater, the willingness to destroy everything for political power, the complete absence of the man she once thought she loved. The Shadow King has been wearing Damien's face, using his body and authority to spread discord among the packs. We have to stop him, Kieran says, his own power beginning to rise in response to hers. If the Shadow King fully manifests, every supernatural creature on the continent becomes his weapon. Luna finishes. He'll turn us into an army of shadows, use our own strength to consume the world we're supposed to protect. The standing stones around them pulse with renewed energy as ancient magic recognizes the magnitude of the threat. This is what the prophecy was always about: not political struggles between packs, but the fundamental battle between light and darkness that shapes the supernatural world. Luna looks at Kieran, seeing her own grim determination reflected in his amber eyes. The packs that want my help tell them to gather at Mount Cascade. All of them. Every wolf who can fight. They won't come together willingly. Too much bad blood, too many territorial disputes. Then we'll make them. Luna's voice carries the authority of her awakened bloodline, power that compels obedience even from other alphas. The Shadow King is counting on our divisions to keep us weak. Time to prove him wrong. Kieran's answering smile is fierce and proud and absolutely devastating. What do you need me to do? The question carries more weight than the words suggest. Luna hears the deeper meaning: not just tactical support, but complete trust in whatever she decides. After everything they've been through, all the betrayals and revelations and moments of doubt, Kieran is offering her his absolute loyalty. Stand with me, Luna says, reaching out to trace the sun mark over his heart. Whatever happens next, whatever I have to become to stop this, stand with me. Where you go, I go, Kieran promises, covering her hand with his own. Always. The mate bond flares between them, sealing the vow with magic that goes deeper than words or oaths. Luna feels Kieran's strength flowing into her consciousness, his unwavering faith in her ability to reshape their world becoming part of her own certainty. Together, they leave the Whispering Stones for what might be the last time. The journey To mount Cascade takes days, but Luna can feel the darkness growing stronger with each mile traveled. The very air tastes of corruption now, heavy with the influence of an entity that turns natural order into chaos. Animals flee the region in massive migrations, following instincts that warn them away from something their primitive minds can't comprehend. By the time they reach the gathering point, hundreds of wolves have already assembled. Not just the major packs, but smaller groups and individual outcasts, all drawn by some combination of desperation and hope. They camp in uneasy clusters around the base of the mountain, old enemies forced into proximity by circumstances beyond their control. Luna walks through the assembled crowds, no longer bothering to hide her true nature. Silver fire crowns her head like a living diadem, and with each step, the earth beneath her feet blooms with ethereal flowers that glow in the gathering darkness. Wolves fall silent as she passes, some dropping to their knees in instinctive recognition of power that transcends political authority. "I am Luna Moonfire," she announces, her voice carrying clearly through the enormous gathering. "Heir to the silver flame, daughter of the bloodline that once united all our people under divine protection." A murmur runs through the assembled wolves, part fear, part awe, part desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, they've found someone capable of standing against the darkness growing in the mountain above them. The Shadow King stirs in his ancient prison. Luna continues, letting her power blaze brighter to emphasize the gravity of their situation. "He has claimed vessels among us, turned our own leaders into weapons against our survival. If we remain divided, if we continue fighting each other instead of the true enemy, we will all fall to shadows that devour light itself." She pauses, letting her gaze sweep across the assembled packs. These are the same wolves who called for her death just 1 week ago, who branded her bloodline a curse, who chose fear over understanding at every opportunity. Now they're looking at her like she might be their salvation. "I don't ask for your loyalty," Luna says, her voice taking on the resonant authority of prophecy fulfilled. "I don't ask for your submission or your worship or your political support. I ask only that you stand with me against an enemy that threatens everything we've built, everything we love, everything we are." The response is immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of voices raised in agreement, wolves howling their acceptance of her leadership, packs that have feuded for decades suddenly united behind a common cause. The sound echoes off the mountain peaks like a declaration of war. That's when the first shadow creatures appear. They pour down the mountainside like a black tide, wolves corrupted by the Shadow King's influence, their forms twisted into something that's neither living nor dead. Red eyes blaze in faces that retain just enough familiar features to be heartbreaking, and when they howl, the sound carries the voices of every pack member who's been consumed by darkness. The battle that erupts is unlike anything in supernatural history. Luna stands at the center of the conflict, silver fire blazing from her skin to strike down shadow beasts that would otherwise overwhelm the assembled defenders. But for every creature they destroy, 2 more emerge from the mountain's depths, endless reinforcements spawned by an entity that feeds on corruption itself. Through the chaos of combat, Luna sees him, Damien Cross, standing on a ridge above, the battle with darkness flowing around him like a living cloak. But the golden eyes she once loved are now pools of absolute void, and when he speaks, multiple voices echo from his throat. "You cannot destroy me, little moon," the Shadow King says through Damien's lips, his words carrying clearly despite the distance. "I am the void that devours light, the darkness that existed before your ancestors first sparked their pathetic flames." Luna's power flares in response to the challenge, silver fire reaching toward the corrupted figure on the ridge. But the Shadow King doesn't retreat. Instead, he laughs, the sound like breaking glass and dying hopes. "Strike me down, and you destroy the man you once claimed to love," he taunts. "Save him, and watch your precious world burn. Choose quickly, heir of Moonfire. My patience has limits." The impossible choice freezes Luna's heart. Through her enhanced senses, she can still detect traces of the real Damien buried beneath layers of shadow corruption. He's alive in there, trapped and terrified, watching his body be used as a weapon against everything he should be protecting. But saving one man while the Shadow King consumes the world would make her no better than the politicians who prioritize convenience over justice. That's when understanding hits her like lightning. The prophecy was never about choosing between light and darkness. It was about balance, shadow and light working together to create something stronger than either force alone. The Shadow King can only be defeated by someone who understands that destruction without creation is meaningless, that power without compassion becomes tyranny. Luna looks at Kieran, who's fighting his way through shadow creatures to reach her side. Through their mate bond, she shares her realization, her desperate plan, her need for someone to trust her completely even when the odds seem impossible. "I'm going into the shadow," she tells him, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she's proposing. "I'm going to face the Shadow King directly, on his own ground." Kieran's amber eyes blaze with fierce protectiveness. "That's suicide. The moment you enter his domain, he'll corrupt you just like he did Damien." "Not if I don't go alone." Luna reaches for him, silver fire and golden shadow beginning to intertwine around their joined hands. The prophecy said shadow and light must work together. "I think that means literally." Understanding dawns in Kieran's expression, followed immediately by grim determination. "You want to link our powers, merge shadow and light into something the Shadow King can't corrupt, something that's never existed before," Luna confirms, "something that can stand in the void without being consumed by it." The plan is insane, untested, almost certainly fatal. But it's also their only chance to save not just Damien, but every supernatural creature threatened by the Shadow King's expanding influence. Kieran doesn't hesitate. "Where you go, I go," he says again, and this time the words carry the weight of absolute commitment. Always, they join hands in the center of the battlefield, silver fire and golden shadow flowing between them like visible music. The effect is immediate and breathtaking. Their combined power creates something entirely new, neither pure light nor pure darkness, but a perfect balance that seems to exist outside normal reality. Around them, shadow creatures recoil from the hybrid energy, unable to comprehend or corrupt something that embodies both creation and destruction. The assembled wolves stop fighting to stare in wonder at the impossible sight of opposing forces working in perfect harmony. Luna and Kieran rise together, their merged power lifting them toward the ridge where the Shadow King waits with growing unease. For the first time since his awakening, the ancient entity faces something that doesn't fit his understanding of how the universe works. "Impossible," he snarls through Damien's corrupted form. "Light and shadow cannot coexist. One must consume the other." "Then you understand nothing about love," Luna replies, her voice harmonizing with Kieran's in otherworldly resonance. "Nothing about choice. Nothing about the strength that comes from embracing what makes you different instead of fearing it." They land on the ridge like avenging angels, their combined power creating a space where the Shadow King's corruption cannot take hold. For the first time in centuries, the ancient entity faces opponents who aren't trying to destroy him through force alone. The battle that follows transcends physical combat. Luna and Kieran dive into the Shadow King's realm, not the mountain peak where his puppet stands, but the psychological landscape where his true essence dwells. They find themselves in a void filled with whispers and regrets, where every doubt and fear that's ever plagued either of them takes physical form to attack their merged consciousness, but their combined power holds firm, silver and gold intertwining to create barriers the Shadow King cannot breach. Together, they push deeper into his domain, seeking the core of corruption that's been poisoning their world. They find Damien suspended in chains of pure darkness, his consciousness trapped while the Shadow King wears his body like a costume. The real Alpha is barely recognizable, drained, terrified, broken by weeks of having his will subordinated to something monstrous. "Luna," he whispers when he sees them, his voice cracked with desperate hope. "I'm sorry for everything. I was so afraid of your power. I couldn't see how afraid I was of my own weaknesses." I know, Luna says, extending silver fire toward the chains that bind him. I forgive you. The Shadow King's roar of fury shakes the void around them as Luna's power begins dissolving his hold on Damien's soul. You cannot save him. He chose corruption willingly. He opened his heart to darkness. He chose fear, Luna corrects, her flames burning brighter. But fear isn't permanent. People can choose differently when they're given the chance. Kieran's shadow power flows around the chains from the opposite direction, not fighting Luna's light but working with it to create a complete circuit of liberation. The Shadow King's bindings, designed to hold against either force individually, cannot withstand their coordinated assault. Damien's chains shatter, and his consciousness floods back into his own body with the force of a dam bursting. On the ridge above the battlefield, his physical form staggers as the Shadow King's control suddenly breaks, but the ancient entity isn't finished. If I cannot have him, the Shadow King snarls, his true form beginning to manifest as pure void. Made visible, then I'll take you instead, little moon. Your light will burn beautifully as it dies. The attack comes from every direction at once, tendrils of absolute darkness that seek to wrap around Luna's consciousness and drag her into the same prison that held Damien. This is the moment of ultimate truth, the test that will determine whether her power is strong enough to stand against corruption itself. Luna doesn't fight the darkness. Instead, she embraces it, not the Shadow King's corruption, but the natural darkness that exists in balance with light, the shadows that define boundaries, the night that makes dawn meaningful, the difficult truths that complement comfortable lies. She takes Kieran's shadow power into herself, not to control it, but to become one with it. The result is transformation beyond anything either of them expected. Luna Moonfire disappears, replaced by something that's neither pure light nor pure darkness but the perfect fusion of both. She becomes balance incarnate, a force that exists in the space between extremes and draws strength from contradiction itself. The Shadow King recoils as if burned, his essence unable to comprehend or corrupt something that embodies its own opposite. What are you? He demands, his voice losing certainty for the first time in millennia. I am what you never learned to be, Luna replies, her voice carrying harmonics that make reality itself resonate. I am someone who chose to grow instead of choosing to hate. The final confrontation lasts only seconds. Luna's balanced power doesn't destroy the Shadow King, instead, it transforms him, burning away eons of accumulated corruption to reveal what he once was before hatred consumed him. For just a moment, she sees the truth: the Shadow King was once like her, a supernatural creature gifted with incredible power, but twisted by fear and isolation into something monstrous. His corruption came not from inherent evil, but from the terrible loneliness of being the only one of his kind. I remember, he whispers, his voice human for the first time since his awakening. I remember what it felt like to hope. Then he dissolves, not into death, but into peace, his essence finally released from the prison of its own making, free to rejoin the natural cycle of creation and destruction that governs all existence. Luna and Kieran find themselves back on the mountain ridge, surrounded by the remnants of a battle that suddenly ended. The shadow creatures have vanished with their creator's transformation, leaving behind confused and exhausted wolves who can barely comprehend what they've witnessed. Damien kneels at Luna's feet, no longer corrupted but clearly broken by his experience as the Shadow King's puppet. When he looks up at her, his golden eyes hold nothing but gratitude and bone-deep regret. I was wrong, he says, his voice cracking with emotion. About everything. About you. About power. About what makes someone worthy of leadership. He bows, his head in submission to authority he finally recognizes as legitimate. Forgive me, Luna Moonfire. Forgive me for being too weak to see your strength. Luna looks down at the man who once rejected her, feeling only compassion for the fear that drove him to such desperate choices. You're forgiven, Damien. All of you are forgiven. Her words carry clearly through the assembled crowd, reaching every wolf who participated in her persecution, every pack leader who called for her death, every family member who chose politics over love. The silver fire crowning her head blazes brighter, but it no longer feels threatening. Instead, it radiates the kind of warmth that heals old wounds and makes new growth possible. "I am Luna Moonfire," she announces, her voice carrying the authority of someone who's transcended every limitation their world tried to place on her. Not Luna of any single pack, but Luna of all who choose to stand in the light. The response is immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of wolves kneel in recognition of power that doesn't demand submission but inspires it, freely given. Pack leaders who've spent decades fighting over territory suddenly see the possibility of a different kind of leadership, one based on protection rather than domination. "The old ways are ending," Luna continues, gesturing to encompass the assembled crowds. "The time of division, of fear ruling over hope, of strength measured by how much you can take rather than how much you can give. We're going to build something better." Kieran moves to stand beside her, his own power flowing in perfect harmony with hers. The sun and moon marks over their hearts blaze with renewed radiance, visible proof of a bond that transcends politics or convenience or any force that once seemed stronger than love. "Together," he says, the word carrying absolute conviction. "Together," Luna agrees, taking his hand as silver and gold light intertwines around them. The werewolf world watches its future being born not through conquest or political maneuvering or the traditional clash of dominance, but through two people who chose to trust each other completely and discovered that love, real love, is the most transformative force in any universe. Luna Moonfire stands crowned in silver fire, no longer running from what she is, no longer ashamed of the power that flows through her veins. No longer trying to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold someone like her. She is exactly what she was always meant to be, a force of nature unleashed, a bloodline reborn, a woman who learned that sometimes the only way to find where you belong is to create that place yourself. The revolution is complete. The real work is just beginning, and for the first time since her story started, Luna knows with absolute certainty that she's exactly where and who she's meant to be. But here's what haunts me about Luna's story, what keeps me awake long after the silver flames have died down and the mountain grows quiet again. In a world that fears power, real power, the kind that can't be contained or controlled or reduced to convenient labels, would you have stood with her when the Council of Alphas pointed their fingers and declared her bloodline a threat, when her own mother chose political safety over a daughter's love, when an entire amphitheater of wolves chanted for her death? Would you have been the voice crying out for justice? Or would you have been among the thousands calling for her chains? It's easy to say you'd be different when you're listening to her story from the safety of distance. Easy to imagine yourself as the hero, the loyal friend, the one person who would have seen through the lies and fear. But when the moment comes, and it always comes when you're forced to choose between comfortable lies and dangerous truth, when standing up means risking everything you've built, when love demands that you defend what others have decided to destroy, which path calls to your soul? Because that's what Luna's story is really about, isn't it? Not magic or ancient prophecies or supernatural battles, though those elements dance through every moment like fire through darkness. At its core, this is a story about a woman who refused to make herself smaller to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold someone like her. A woman who learned that sometimes the only way to find where you belong is to create that place yourself, even if it means standing alone against a world that would rather see you broken than free. Is she a savior crowned in silver flame, destined to reshape the supernatural world through divine authority? Or is she simply a woman who refused to be broken by a world that couldn't understand her fire? Maybe the answer is both. Maybe the answer is neither. Maybe the most important question isn't what Luna Moonfire became, but what she chose to become it for. Love. Not the gentle, easy kind that asks for nothing and risks even less. Not the conditional acceptance that says, "I'll love you if you change," or "I'll stand by you as long as it's convenient." Luna's story burns with a different kind of love entirely, the fierce, dangerous kind that chooses someone the world has rejected and says, "I see exactly who you are, and I'm not afraid." Love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's choosing someone when choosing them costs you everything else. Sometimes it's standing in the flames and saying, "I'm not afraid of your light." Sometimes it's looking at power that could destroy you and recognizing that the real danger would be a world without that power in it. Kieran saw her not as something to be tamed, but as something to be treasured. In a world of alphas demanding submission, he offered partnership. In a supernatural society that wanted to cage her abilities, he taught her to let them soar. When everyone else saw danger, he saw beauty. When they saw a problem to be solved, he saw a woman to be loved. That's the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. The kind that doesn't ask you to hide your true nature but helps you embrace it more fully. The kind that doesn't fear your power but helps you learn to wield it with wisdom. The kind that sees your scars and calls them beautiful, that witnesses your fire and asks to dance in the flames. But here's what makes Luna's journey so powerful, so necessary, so absolutely vital in a world that would rather reduce complex people to simple categories. She didn't wait for someone else to save her. She didn't spend her story being rescued by the man who loved her, though his support was the foundation that made her strength possible. She saved herself. She chose herself. She looked at a world that called her too dangerous to love and decided that maybe the problem wasn't with her power, maybe the problem was with their fear. The silver fire that crowns her head isn't just magic. It's the visible manifestation of a woman who stopped apologizing for taking up space, who stopped making herself smaller to accommodate other people's insecurities, who learned that the things that make you different aren't flaws to be hidden, they're gifts to be celebrated, weapons to be wielded in service of something greater than yourself. Luna Moonfire stands as proof that you don't have to choose between being powerful and being loved, that you don't have to sacrifice your true nature for acceptance, that sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is refuse to let the world convince you that you're too much, too dangerous, too different to deserve happiness. If this tale of rejection transformed into power, of love that burns brighter than fear, of a woman who looked at her own reflection and finally saw something worth fighting for, if this story has ignited something wild within you, something that recognizes its own fire in Luna's silver flames, then subscribe to Werewolf Shifter Romance Tales, because here, beneath the silver moon and dancing shadows, we tell stories that refuse to be forgotten, tales that burn in your blood long after the final word has faded into silence. Stories about women who choose to burn brightly instead of burning out, about men who see strength where others see threat, about love that transforms not just the people who find it, but entire worlds. We tell stories about you, about the fire that lives in your own veins, waiting for permission to blaze, about the power you carry that the world has taught you to fear, about the love you deserve not despite who you are, but because of exactly who you are. Hit that notification bell, and let us guide you through more nights where love conquers even the darkest magic, where ancient powers awaken in modern hearts, where mate bonds transcend politics and prophecies and every force that tries to keep soulmates apart, where women like Luna Moonfire remind us all that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can be is exactly who you were born to be. Welcome to the pack, Moonchild. Your story is just beginning. And when you find your own silver fire, because you will find it, burning bright and beautiful in the depths of your soul, remember Luna's choice. Remember that power without purpose is empty, but power wielded with love can reshape entire worlds. Remember that you are not too much. You are exactly enough. Remember that your fire is not something to be feared, it's something to be celebrated. Welcome home. But as Luna Moonfire and Kieran Blackthorne walk hand in hand down the mountain path, silver and gold light intertwining around them like visible promises, the shadows behind them shift in ways that have nothing to do with wind or moonlight. The assembled packs have begun their journey home, carrying news of the new world being born to territories across the continent. Stories will be told around pack fires for generations about the night the last Moonfire heir reclaimed her crown, about love that conquered ancient evil, about the beginning of an age when power serves protection instead of domination. But those who know how to listen really listen, with senses older than civilization itself, hear something else carried on the mountain winds tonight. A whisper from the ancient stones, spoken in voices that predate any pack's claim to these sacred peaks. The first Shadow King has fallen, but he was merely the herald. Luna doesn't hear it. She's too caught up in the warmth of Kieran's hand in hers, too focused on the future they're building together to notice how the very earth beneath their feet seems to pulse with responding energies. Her victory tonight was complete, absolute, transformative. The corrupted entity that threatened their world has been cleansed, the supernatural community united under her guidance, and for the first time in her life, she walks without fear of what tomorrow might bring. She thinks her battles are won. She has no idea what's coming. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in trenches where sunlight has never penetrated and pressure would crush diamond into dust, something vast and patient feels the ripples of Luna's awakening power washing across the planet like shockwaves. Ancient eyes open for the first time in millennia, reflecting not darkness but the cold fire of stars that died before Earth formed its first continents. The entity that stirs in those crushing depths makes the Shadow King look like a child's nightmare, where he was corrupted by isolation and twisted by hatred. This thing was born from the spaces between realities, from the gaps in creation where physics breaks down and possibility becomes nightmare. It has been waiting so very long for the Moonfire Bloodline to awaken. 7 sisters, it whispers in a voice like glaciers grinding against bedrock, like continents shifting in their sleep. 7 fragments of the first flame, scattered across the world to keep us weak. But one calls to the others now. One burns bright enough to be seen from the void between stars. The creature's massive form unfolds in the oceanic darkness, revealing geometries that shouldn't exist in 3-dimensional space. Each movement sends tsunamis racing toward distant shores, earthquakes rippling through tectonic plates, atmospheric disturbances that will puzzle meteorologists for decades. But its attention isn't focused on the destruction it casually causes. All of its vast intelligence is concentrated on the silver fire blazing from a mountainside thousands of miles away, calculating probabilities and preparing responses for the war that's about to begin. She saved them from Shadow, the entity. Muses, tasting Luna's victory through vibrations in the Earth's magnetic field. Let us see how she handles light that burns reality itself. On the mountain path, Luna suddenly stumbles, one hand pressed to her chest where something deeper than her heart sends out a pulse of recognition. For just a moment, her silver fire flickers with harmonics she's never felt before, not her own power, but echoes of it, distant voices singing in frequencies that make her bones ache with longing. What is it? Kieran asks immediately, his own shadow abilities rising in protective response to her distress. Luna shakes her head, trying to clear the strange sensation. I thought I felt. It's probably nothing, just exhaustion catching up with me. But it isn't nothing, and somewhere in the deeper parts of her consciousness, she knows it. The figure watching from the tree line knows it too. She steps out of concealment slowly, deliberately, letting moonlight reveal features that are startlingly similar to Luna's own. Silver-streaked hair, pale skin that seems to glow with inner radiance, eyes that hold depths of knowledge and sorrow in equal measure. She's older than Luna by perhaps a decade, carrying herself with the controlled grace of someone who's learned to hide incredible power behind careful normalcy. When she speaks, her voice carries the same otherworldly harmonics that mark all true Moonfire descendants. Sister, she calls softly, the word drifting down the mountain path like a challenge and a promise wrapped together. It's time you learned our family's true history. Luna freezes, her newly awakened senses confirming what her mind struggles to accept. This woman carries the same bloodline markers, the same genetic signature, the same fundamental resonance that flows through Luna's own veins. She's not the last of her line after all. My name is Arya Stormkeller. The stranger continues, moving closer with fluid steps that leave no prints in the soft earth. And you, little sister, have just announced our presence to every enemy our ancestors spent millennia hiding from. Around them, the mountain peaks begin to resonate with new energies as other powers stir in response to the night's revelations. Not just one additional bloodline, but several ancient families that have kept their abilities hidden since the original purges, waiting for the right moment to emerge from shadows that have protected them for generations. The prophecy Luna thought she'd fulfilled contains verses she's never seen, written in languages that predate human civilization. Tonight was never the ending of her story, it was the opening movement of a symphony that will reshape not just the supernatural world, but reality itself. The Moonfire legacy has 7 bloodlines, Arya explains, her gaze moving between Luna and the distant horizon where storm clouds are gathering with unnatural speed. Fire and storm, earth and ocean, light and void, and the 7th the one that binds all others together. Lightning flickers in the approaching clouds, but it's silver lightning, controlled and purposeful, answering to the will of someone who commands the fury of heaven itself. You were just the first to awaken, Luna, the catalyst that calls us all home. Arya's smile holds depths of affection and regret. But awakening us also awakened them, the entities that exist in the spaces between worlds, that feed on the gaps. In reality, our combined power can create. The storm reaches the mountain peaks with impossible speed, bringing not rain, but whispers in dead languages. Not wind but pressure that makes the air itself feel thick with approaching danger. Luna's silver fire blazes higher in response, recognizing threats her conscious mind hasn't yet processed. What do you mean? Luna asks, but even as the words leave her lips, she's beginning to understand. The Shadow King wasn't an isolated threat, he was a symptom of something far larger, far more dangerous, far more patient in its hunger. I mean, the real war begins now, Arya replies, her own power beginning to manifest as storm winds that spiral around her with deadly precision. And this time, little sister, love alone won't be enough to save us. The camera of consciousness pulls back, revealing Luna and Kieran as tiny figures against a vast landscape that's beginning to transform in response to forces beyond their comprehension. Mountain peaks that should be solid rock shimmer with otherworldly energies. Forest valleys twist into configurations that hurt to look at directly. The very fabric of space-time begins to develop stress fractures where ancient powers press against the boundaries of what should be possible, and from the shadows between realities, a voice speaks with the authority of something that existed before creation began. The Moonfire bloodlines gather. The old barriers weaken. The Feast of Worlds can finally begin. The silver flames dancing around Luna and Kieran flicker and dim, as forces beyond their current understanding begin to take notice of the small supernatural community they've just united. What felt like victory moments ago now feels like the opening move in a game whose rules they don't yet comprehend. Love may have won this battle, the entity whispers from the spaces between heartbeats, between thoughts, between the molecules that make up matter itself. But destiny demands so much more than love. The screen fades to black, but the silver flames continue dancing in the darkness, no longer signs of triumph, but beacons calling out across the void to powers that should have remained sleeping forever. Luna Moonfire thought she was claiming her destiny. Instead, she's just awakened the apocalypse. Next time, we meet the Stormcaller and discover what happens when saving the world becomes the first step toward destroying it.